Imagine a world where the very foundations of our ideas about democracy, philosophy, and art were born from a civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. What if the secrets of ancient Greece still shape our lives today, hidden in the ideas we live by and the culture we breathe? The dawn of Greek civilization can be traced back to the fertile and strategic lands of the Aegean, where the first sparks of human innovation emerged. The Neolithic period, around 7000 BCE, marked the beginning of permanent settlements in Greece. Early agricultural communities flourished, relying on the abundant resources provided by the land cereals, olives, and livestock. These communities formed the foundation for what would later evolve into a rich and complex civilization. As settlements grew, the geography of Greece played a significant role in shaping its early history. The mountainous terrain, with its rugged hills and deep valleys, isolated communities from one another. This natural division resulted in the development of independent city-states, each with its own unique culture and identity. The Greeks were fiercely loyal to their individual polis, but this geographical isolation also spurred trade and interaction, leading to cultural exchange with neighboring civilizations. The island of Crete, home to the Minoan civilization, was among the first to develop a distinct culture that influenced the entire Aegean region. Around 2000 BCE, the Minoans built impressive palaces, created intricate art, and established vast trading networks that stretched across the Mediterranean. Their success laid the groundwork for the later Greek civilizations that would rise on the mainland. However, it wasn't just the material wealth of the Minoans that left a mark on Greek history. Their social structures and artistic achievements also had a lasting impact. The Minoans, for instance, built multi-story palaces with advanced plumbing systems, and their vibrant frescoes depicted scenes of nature, religion, and everyday life. This artistry and technological prowess were mirrored in the later developments of Mycenae and other mainland Greek cities. Yet, the Greek world was not solely defined by its art and architecture. It was the development of social and political structures that would shape the trajectory of the civilization. The concept of democracy, particularly in Athens, and the warrior ethos in Sparta, emerged from the social dynamics of these city-states. These political systems, born from the geographical constraints of their environment, would influence the future governance of the Greek world and beyond. In the early stages of Greek civilization, religion and myth were also central to the fabric of society. The gods and goddesses of the Greek pantheon were not distant, detached figures. They were active in the lives of the people, shaping everything from personal relationships to state affairs. Temples dedicated to the gods became focal points in the city-states, and religious festivals, such as the Olympic Games, helped to unify the Greek people under a common cultural identity. The role of geography in shaping Greek culture and politics cannot be overstated. While the mountainous terrain led to political fragmentation, it also fostered a spirit of independence, competition, and innovation. This geographic isolation, combined with the need for trade and communication, laid the groundwork for the rise of the Greek city-state and the enduring legacy of Greek civilization in the centuries that followed. The Minoan civilization, flourishing on the island of Crete, represents one of the earliest and most influential cultures in the ancient Greek world. Around 2000 BCE, the Minoans began to establish their dominance, driven by a strategic location at the crossroads of the Aegean, Mediterranean, and Near Eastern worlds. Their ability to harness the sea for trade made them a powerful maritime force. Crete, with its fertile plains, ample resources, and access to the sea, became a thriving hub of commerce and culture. The Minoans were known for their remarkable advances in art and architecture. The Palace of Knossos, the largest and most impressive Minoan structure, stood as a testament to their architectural ingenuity. It featured complex layouts with multiple stories, intricate frescoes, and sophisticated plumbing systems luxuries. far ahead of their time. The walls of the palace were adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting scenes of nature, religious rituals, and daily life, showcasing the Minoans' love for beauty and their deep connection to their surroundings. These artworks not only reflected the Minoan worldview, but also suggested a society that revered fertility, nature, and the divine. In addition to their artistic achievements, the Minoans excelled in trade. Their fleet of ships sailed across the Mediterranean, establishing trade routes with Egypt, the Near East, and other Aegean cultures. Minoan goods, including pottery, textiles, and metalwork, were highly sought after and spread throughout the region. This trade network enabled the Minoans to accumulate wealth, fueling their cultural and technological advancements. Their influence extended beyond Crete, shaping the development of other Aegean civilizations, particularly the Mycenaeans. However, the Minoan civilization's rise was eventually followed by its decline. The causes of their fall remain a subject of debate, but several factors likely contributed to their collapse. Natural disasters, such as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, may have damaged their infrastructure and disrupted trade routes. Additionally, the Mycenaeans, a rising power on the Greek mainland, began to assert their dominance, potentially leading to conflict with the Minoans. By 1450 BCE, the Minoan civilization had largely disintegrated, with the palaces and urban centers falling into ruin. Despite their eventual demise, the legacy of the Minoans lived on, particularly in the culture of the Mycenaeans. Many aspects of Minoan art, architecture, and religious practices influenced their mainland successors. The Mycenaeans adopted Minoan writing systems, artistic styles, and trade practices, carrying forward the cultural heritage of Crete. Furthermore, the Minoan emphasis on maritime trade and the sea would be reflected in the later Greek civilizations, which embraced the importance of the ocean for both economic prosperity and military power. The Minoan civilization, though short-lived, left an indelible mark on the history of Greece, shaping the course of its future development and laying the foundations for what would become the classical Greek world. The Mycenaean civilization, emerging around 1600 BCE, marked a significant chapter in the history of Greece. Based on the mainland, the Mycenaeans were heavily influenced by the Minoan culture, adopting their art, architecture, and trade practices. However, the Mycenaeans soon established their own distinct identity, with powerful kingdoms scattered across the Greek mainland. These kingdoms, such as Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, were fortified with massive stone walls, the most famous example being the Lion Gate of Mycenae. These impressive structures not only demonstrated their architectural prowess but also their militaristic nature. The Mycenaeans were fierce warriors, and their culture was deeply rooted in the ideals of strength, honor, and conquest. At the height of their power, the Mycenaeans controlled vast territories across the Aegean, including parts of the Greek mainland, the islands, and even parts of Anatolia. Their dominance in trade allowed them to establish a far-reaching network that connected them with Egypt, the Near East, and other Mediterranean civilizations. The Mycenaeans were skilled in the production of pottery, metalwork, and textiles, which they exchanged for raw materials such as timber and precious metals. This thriving trade network helped solidify their wealth and influence. One of the most famous episodes from Mycenaean history is the Trojan War, immortalized in Homer's Iliad. According to legend, the war was sparked by a dispute between the Greek hero Paris and the Spartan queen Helen, whose abduction by Paris led to a 10-year siege of the city of Troy. While the Iliad is primarily a work of myth, there is evidence that the war may have been based on real events. Archaeological findings suggest that the city of Troy was indeed besieged around the time traditionally assigned to the Trojan War, around the 12th century BCE. Whether the war itself was as grand and divine as Homer described, or a more straightforward conflict over trade routes and territory, it highlights the importance of military conquest in Mycenaean society. However, The great Mycenaean civilization, once thriving, eventually collapsed. By the end of the 12th century BCE, the Mycenaean cities were in ruins. The reasons for this collapse remain debated, but several factors likely contributed. The Trojan War may have weakened the Mycenaeans, depleting their resources and causing internal strife. Additionally, invasions by foreign tribes, including the Dorians, and widespread natural disasters such as earthquakes, may have further destabilized the region. As the Mycenaean cities fell, so did the elaborate bureaucratic systems that had sustained them. The collapse of the Mycenaean civilization ushered in a period known as the Dark Ages. This era was marked by a decline in literacy, trade, and monumental construction, with many of the once great cities left abandoned. The loss of centralized leadership and the shift to more localized, tribal societies left Greece in a state of relative isolation. Despite the apparent decline, the Dark Ages also laid the groundwork for the later development of Greek culture, as the Greeks slowly began to rebuild and reorganize their society. The stories of the Mycenaeans, particularly the Trojan War, would later become integral to the Greek cultural and literary traditions that would shape the classical period. After the fall of Mycenae, Greece entered a period known as the Greek Dark Ages, a time marked by a sharp decline in population, culture, and technological advancement. The once vibrant Mycenaean cities, with their grand palaces, intricate pottery, and impressive fortifications, lay in ruins. The collapse of these centers of power led to a retreat into smaller, more isolated settlements, and the advanced systems of trade and governance that had connected the Aegean world fell apart. The writing systems used by the Mycenaeans, such as Linear B, disappeared, and literacy came to an abrupt halt. During this time, the Greek world seemed to regress in many ways. The grand works of art and architecture from the Mycenaean era were replaced by simpler, less refined pottery. The bustling trade routes that had once linked Greece to the broader Mediterranean world fell into disuse, and the region saw a stagnation in technological progress. Agriculture became more localized, and the knowledge of metallurgy, especially the use of bronze, waned. The population decreased, and many once prosperous regions were abandoned. The social and cultural life of the Mycenaeans was lost, leaving little more than fragmented memories of their former grandeur. However, by the end of the 11th century BCE, signs of recovery began to emerge. One of the most significant changes during this period was the rise of iron tools, which replaced the bronze weapons and tools of the earlier Mycenaean age. Iron, being more abundant and easier to work with, allowed for a broader distribution of tools and weapons. This technological shift brought about a new era of agricultural productivity and military organization. The ability to craft durable iron weapons also contributed to the formation of small, local power structures that began to emerge in various parts of Greece. Alongside the rise of iron tools, literacy began to make a slow but crucial return. The Greek alphabet, based on the Phoenician writing system, was developed around the 8th century BCE. This new script allowed for the recording of language in a way that was more accessible than the complex scripts of the Mycenaeans. The alphabet facilitated the recording of important events, religious practices, and laws, laying the foundation for the Greek literary tradition. It was during this time that the first great works of Greek literature, including the epic poems the Iliad and the Odyssey, were written down, preserving the stories and traditions of the past. As Greece emerged from the Dark Ages, the foundations of the Greek city-state, or polis, began to take shape. These city-states were small, self-governing communities that were centered around a single city and its surrounding territory. The polis became the fundamental unit of Greek society, each one with its own government, laws, and way of life. The rise of the polis marked the beginning of a new phase in Greek history, one in which the concept of citizenship, political participation, and civic responsibility would take center stage. This new form of organization would lay the groundwork for the flourishing of Greek culture, philosophy, and democracy in the centuries to come. As Greece recovered from the Dark Ages, the rise of independent city-states, or polis, became one of the most defining features of Greek civilization. Athens, Sparta, and Corinth, among others, emerged as powerful and influential centers of culture, politics, and military strength. These early city-states were not just political entities, they were also hubs of economic activity, trade, and social life. The development of these city-states was influenced by several factors, with geography playing a particularly significant role in shaping their independence and growth. The Greek landscape, with its rugged mountains and deep valleys, naturally divided the region into isolated areas. The lack of large, fertile plains and the proximity of the sea encouraged the development of separate, self-sustaining communities. Each city-state was built around a central urban area, usually on a fortified hill, and had its own surrounding territory. The mountains and seas acted as natural barriers, making it difficult for one central government to control the entire region. As a result, these independent city-states grew in isolation, each developing its own distinct identity and way of life. The geographical layout of Greece fostered competition and rivalry between these city-states, but also encouraged a rich diversity of cultures and political systems. Athens, with its strategic position along the coast, became a center of trade, culture, and intellectual activity. Its proximity to the sea allowed it to become a thriving commercial hub, connecting Greece to the wider Mediterranean world. Athens developed a unique system of governance, moving from monarchy to aristocracy, and eventually toward democracy in the 5th century BCE. The city became renowned for its advancements in philosophy, arts, and sciences, with figures such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shaping Western thought. In contrast, Sparta, located in the fertile plain of Laconia, developed a militaristic society focused on discipline, strength, and communal living. The Spartans were known for their rigorous training and their dedication to creating a powerful, unified army. Unlike Athens, which embraced democracy, Sparta was ruled by a small group of elites, with 2 kings and a council of elders holding power. Spartan society was highly structured, with citizens divided into distinct social classes, and military service was mandatory for all male citizens. Corinth, strategically located on the narrow Isthmus of Corinth, became one of the wealthiest city-states due to its control over the land route between northern and southern Greece, as well as its maritime trade. Corinth was known for its luxury goods, pottery, and for its skilled artisans. Politically, it was ruled by a series of tyrants, including the famous ruler Periander, who expanded Corinth's influence through military conquests and diplomatic alliances. Each city-state had its own social and political structure, but they shared common elements, such as the importance of citizenship and the role of military service in maintaining the strength of the state. In Athens, citizens enjoyed certain rights and participated directly in governance through the assembly, while in Sparta, the focus was on the military and the collective good over individual rights. Despite their differences, the city-states of Greece were united by a common language, shared religious practices, and the belief in the importance of civic duty. The rise of the city-state in ancient Greece marked the beginning of a new era where the concept of political participation, the idea of citizenship, and the organization of society around a city and its surrounding land became the foundation for the development of Western civilization. The Olympic Games, held in the sanctuary of Olympia in southwestern Greece, stand as one of the most iconic traditions to emerge from ancient Greek civilization. The origins of the Games trace back to at least 776 BCE, though the celebration likely predates that date, with evidence suggesting religious festivals were already held in honor of Zeus, the king of the gods. These games were originally a religious event, conducted every 4 years in the sacred space of Olympia, where athletes from various Greek city-states would come together to compete in a range of athletic contests, all in the spirit of honoring Zeus. Over time, the Games grew into the most prestigious and anticipated event in the Greek world, drawing competitors and spectators from all corners of the Hellenic world. The cultural significance of the Olympic Games extended far beyond the realm of sport. These games became a symbol of Greek unity, a rare opportunity for city-states with often competing interests to come together in peace. The truce, or ekacheria, called for the cessation of hostilities during the Games, allowing athletes and spectators to travel freely without fear of war. This unique peace underscored the Games' role as a unifying force, as the athletes competed not only for personal glory, but also for the honor of their respective city-states. The Games were a celebration of physical prowess, discipline, and the ideals of human excellence that were central to Greek philosophy. They reflected the Greek belief in the importance of balance between the body and the mind, echoing the notion of kalokagathiathi, harmony of physical and moral virtue. Athletes who competed in the Olympic Games were not only skilled athletes but also heroes in the eyes of the Greek public. Victorious competitors were celebrated as champions, and their feats were immortalized in statues and poems. The prestige of winning at Olympia was unmatched, often leading to fame and wealth for the athletes and their families. Many winners were awarded with free meals for life, a form of recognition and support that elevated their social status. However, the true reward was the honor of representing one's city-state on the world stage, earning the admiration of the Greek world. The lasting legacy of the Olympic Games in Greek identity cannot be overstated. The Games provided a model of excellence that transcended sport and permeated every aspect of Greek life. Victory at Olympia was considered a triumph of Greek values, and the Games themselves became an expression of Greek cultural pride. They celebrated the human spirit, the pursuit of excellence, and the bonds that united the diverse Greek-speaking world, from the mountainous terrains of the north to the sun-drenched islands in the south. Even after the fall of ancient Greece, the Olympics continued to influence the cultural and athletic traditions of later civilizations. The idea of athletic competition as a path to glory and the concept of a pan-Hellenic event with a religious and cultural foundation would echo through the ages, eventually inspiring the modern Olympic Games. In this way, the Olympic Games remain not only a testament to ancient Greek culture, but a living legacy that continues to unite the world in the pursuit of excellence and camaraderie. The Archaic period, which spanned roughly from 800 to 500 BCE, marked a time of profound transformation in Greece, laying the foundations for what would later be known as the Greek Renaissance. During this time, Greek society experienced a flourishing of artistic and cultural developments that reshaped the way the Greeks viewed themselves and their place in the world. The Greeks began to move away from the rigid, formulaic styles of earlier periods, embracing more naturalistic forms in their art, architecture, and sculpture. Statues of gods, athletes, and aristocrats became more lifelike, with attention to proportion and human anatomy. Artists, such as the sculptor Phidias, introduced a sense of movement and expression into their works, capturing the idealized human form in ways that had never been done before. This new approach reflected a growing interest in the individual and the human experience, a theme that would dominate Greek thought for centuries. Politically, the Archaic period also witnessed the rise of new political structures, most notably the introduction of democracy in Athens. The idea of democracy, where citizens had a direct role in making decisions for the state, was radical and revolutionary. Led by figures like Cleisthenes, Athens took steps to establish a system where all male citizens, regardless of their social status, could participate in political life. This marked a dramatic departure from the aristocratic systems of government that had previously ruled Greece. The establishment of the Athenian democracy was not just a political shift, but also a cultural one, reflecting the growing belief in the power of the people and the importance of civic engagement. Other Greek city-states, such as Sparta, took different paths, focusing on military prowess and oligarchic rule. Yet the idea of democratic governance began to spread, influencing Greek society and the wider Mediterranean world. At the same time, the Archaic period saw the rise of Greek philosophy, which would go on to have an enduring impact on Western thought. Philosophers such as Heraclitus and Pythagoras began to question traditional beliefs and explore fundamental questions about the nature of existence, the universe, and the human soul. These thinkers sought to understand the world through reason and observation rather than myth and religion. The works of early poets like Homer and Hesiod also provided insights into Greek values, offering stories of gods, heroes, and the human condition that would resonate throughout Greek culture for centuries. These literary works not only entertained, but also served as moral guides, reflecting the Greek emphasis on honor, duty, and the pursuit of excellence. The artistic and cultural achievements of the Archaic period laid the groundwork for the Greek Renaissance, a time of intellectual, artistic, and political growth that would lead to the peak of Greek civilization in the classical period. The changes in art, politics, and philosophy during this time were not just about innovation for innovation's sake, but represented a deeper shift in Greek society, where the individual and the collective began to play a larger role in shaping the world around them. These developments would continue to influence not only the future of Greece, but the entire Western world. During the 6th century BCE, many Greek city-states witnessed the rise of tyrants leaders who seized power unconstitutionally, often from aristocratic families, but who did not necessarily rule by hereditary right. Tyrants, as they were called, were not always despots in the modern sense of the word. In fact, many of them brought much-needed reforms to their cities, improving the lives of common citizens and promoting economic prosperity. This period, known as the Age of Tyrants, was a time of significant political change across Greece, and although tyranny was often associated with instability, it played an essential role in shaping the future of Greek governance. One of the most notable figures from this era was Pisistratus, who ruled Athens in the 6th century BCE. His rise to power came through a combination of popular support and strategic alliances, including military victories. Once in control, Pisistratus enacted policies that favored the lower classes. He introduced land reforms, reducing the power of the aristocracy and redistributing land to poor farmers, which helped to stabilize Athenian society. Pisistratus also promoted economic growth by supporting trade and public works, including the building of temples and roads. Though a tyrant in the technical sense, his rule benefited the common people, and he was remembered as a wise and just leader by many Athenians. Despite the initial success of tyrants like Pisistratus, their rule was inherently unstable. Tyrants relied on personal power rather than institutional authority, and their rule was often challenged by those who resented their authority. In some cases, as with the rule of Pisistratus's sons, the tyranny became more oppressive and less focused on the welfare of the citizens. This ultimately led to dissatisfaction and revolt. After the death of Pisistratus, his sons, Hippias and Hipparchus, attempted to maintain control of Athens, but their rule grew increasingly tyrannical and alienated the population. The growing dissatisfaction with their leadership led to their eventual overthrow in 510 BCE. The fall of tyranny in Athens marked a crucial turning point in the city's political development. After the expulsion of the tyrants, Athens moved toward the establishment of a more inclusive form of governance, where citizens could participate directly in decision-making. This transformation laid the foundations for the Athenian democracy, famously codified by leaders like Cleisthenes. The reforms that followed the collapse of tyranny provided all free male citizens with a say in the political process, shifting power from the hands of an individual ruler to the collective will of the people. The Age of Tyrants was a time of political experimentation and change, and although tyrants were often seen as illegitimate in their seizure of power, their leadership contributed to the political evolution of Greece. By the end of the 6th century BCE, the fall of tyranny in cities like Athens set the stage for the rise of democracy, demonstrating the Greek belief in the potential for self-governance and the inherent danger of concentrated, unchecked power. Athens, once a city-state ruled by kings and later tyrants, underwent a transformative shift during the 6th and 5th centuries BCE that would change the course of history. At the heart of this transformation was the establishment of democracy under the leadership of Cleisthenes around 508 BCE. Cleisthenes, often called the father of Athenian democracy, restructured the political landscape by breaking the power of aristocratic families and creating a system where citizens, regardless of social class, could participate directly in decision-making. His reforms laid the foundation for Athens to become the beacon of democracy, where the people referred to as the demoshad, the power to make critical choices about their governance. This new system of democracy allowed for greater participation in political life, where citizens could vote on laws, elect officials, and engage in public debates. The introduction of institutions like the Assembly and the Council of 500 enabled Athenians to make collective decisions, ensuring that power was more evenly distributed and that decisions were made in the interest of the city as a whole. Though women, slaves, and non-citizens were excluded from this democratic process, Athens became a symbol of democratic ideals, influencing future political thought for centuries to come. Beyond politics, Athens flourished as the intellectual and cultural center of Greece. The city became a hub for philosophers, artists, and writers who pushed the boundaries of human thought and creativity. Athenian philosophy, led by figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, sought to explore fundamental questions about existence, ethics, and the nature of knowledge. Socrates, with his method of questioning and dialogue, laid the groundwork for Western philosophy, challenging conventional wisdom and encouraging his fellow Athenians to think critically about their beliefs and actions. His teachings, though controversial, inspired generations of philosophers and thinkers across the world. In addition to philosophy, Athens experienced a golden age in art and culture, particularly in the fields of drama, sculpture, and architecture. The city produced some of the greatest playwrights in history, including Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, whose tragedies explored themes of fate, morality, and the human condition. The Athenian stage became the birthplace of Western theatre, where plays were performed in the grand theatres of the city, such as the Theatre of Dionysus. Sculptors like Phidias, who worked on the Parthenon, created masterpieces that combined beauty with religious symbolism, capturing the ideals of Greek culture. Athens also became a center for the visual arts, where the development of realistic portraiture and the study of human anatomy pushed the boundaries of artistic expression. The city's architectural achievements, including the construction of the Parthenon, were expressions of both religious devotion and civic pride, symbolizing the wealth, power, and creativity of Athens. As Athens blossomed in philosophy, art, and democracy, it became the intellectual and cultural heart of Greece, attracting thinkers and artists from all over the Greek world. The legacy of Athens during this period continues to influence modern thought and culture, shaping ideas about government, philosophy, and the arts. In Athens, the convergence of democratic ideals with intellectual and cultural growth created a city that was, for a time, the most powerful and influential in the ancient world. Sparta, located in the southeastern part of the Peloponnesian Peninsula, developed into one of the most powerful city-states in ancient Greece, known for its highly disciplined and militaristic society. Unlike Athens, which was renowned for its intellectual and cultural achievements, Sparta's strength lay in its formidable military and its unique social structure, which prioritized training and discipline above all else. The Spartan state was built around the idea of creating the perfect soldier and this shaped every aspect of Spartan life, from childhood to adulthood. At the heart of Spartan society was a rigid caste system that ensured the city-state's military superiority. At the top were the Spartiates, full citizens who underwent rigorous military training from an early age. This training, known as the agoge, was designed to produce warriors capable of enduring the harshest conditions and succeeding in battle. Boys entered the agoge at the age of 7 and were taught to fight, endure hardship, and live in a communal environment. Spartan males were expected to serve in the military until the age of 60, making the Spartan army one of the most experienced and battle-hardened forces in the ancient world. Beneath the Spartiates were the Perioikoi, free non-citizens who were responsible for trade, manufacturing, and other essential tasks. They were subject to Spartan rule, but were not given full political rights. The most important group in Spartan society, however, were the Helots enslaved people who worked the land and performed manual labor. The Helots were owned by the state, not by individual Spartans, and their primary role was to support the Spartiate warriors. The Helots outnumbered the Spartiates by a large margin, and their presence shaped the Spartan way of life. Spartan citizens lived in constant fear of Helot uprisings, which led to the institution of the Crypteia, a secret police force tasked with keeping the Helots in check through terror and repression. The Spartan way of life was austere, with little room for personal luxury or indulgence. The emphasis was always on collective strength and the needs of the state. Spartan men lived in barracks, shared meals, and focused almost exclusively on military training. Spartan women, while not allowed to participate in politics, enjoyed more freedoms than their counterparts in other Greek city-states. They were encouraged to maintain physical fitness to ensure that they would give birth to strong, healthy children to serve the state. Sparta's military successes were legendary, with the most famous being the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE. Led by King Leonidas, a small force of 300 Spartans, along with their allies, made a heroic stand against the Persian army, which was vastly superior in number. Although the Spartans were ultimately defeated, their bravery became a symbol of resistance and self-sacrifice that resonated throughout Greek history. Spartan soldiers were also instrumental in the Greek victory over the Persians in the subsequent Battle of Plataea, which marked the end of Persian invasions and secured Greece's independence. The Spartan emphasis on military prowess and their strict social structure left a profound impact on Greek history. Their military discipline and the reputation of their warriors made them a dominant force in the Greek world for centuries, but their rigid system also contributed to internal weaknesses. The need for a large and subjugated Helot population to sustain their society, combined with a resistance to cultural and intellectual development, ultimately limited Sparta's ability to adapt in an ever-changing Greek world. Despite this, Sparta remains one of the most iconic examples of a militaristic society in history. The origins of the Persian Wars can be traced to the aggressive expansion of the Persian Empire under the rule of King Darius I. The vast Persian Empire, which stretched from the Indus River in the east to the Aegean Sea in the west, had already made significant territorial gains by the time it turned its attention to the Greek city-states. The causes of the conflict were rooted in the Persian desire to expand their influence into Greece and the rivalry that had developed between the Greeks and the Persians. However, the immediate spark for the conflict came from the Ionian Revolt, which began in 499 BCE. The Ionian city-states, located on the coast of modern-day Turkey, had been under Persian control for years. These cities were heavily taxed and forced to submit to the authority of the Persian king. In 499 BCE, the Ionians, with the support of Athens and Eretria, revolted against Persian rule. Though the revolt was ultimately crushed by the Persians, it marked the beginning of hostilities between the Greek world and the Persian Empire. As a result of their involvement in the Ionian Revolt, Athens and Eretria became targets of Persian retribution. Darius, seeking to punish the Greek city-states for their interference and to assert Persian dominance over the Aegean, turned his attention to Greece. His initial plan was to subdue Athens and Eretria and to make an example of them. In 490 BCE, Darius sent a large fleet and army to invade Greece, landing first on the island of Euboea, where they sacked the city of Eretria. From there, the Persian forces sailed towards the Athenian coast. The Greek city-states, initially hesitant to join forces, recognized the threat posed by the Persian invasion. Athens, under the leadership of Miltiades, took the initiative and called upon its allies to form a united front. The Athenians, despite being vastly outnumbered, chose to confront the Persian forces at the plain of Marathon. The Persian army, though well-equipped and experienced, underestimated the determination and strategy of the Greek forces. The Athenians, with the help of the Plataeans, achieved a stunning victory, forcing the Persians to retreat. The Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE became a symbol of Greek resistance against overwhelming odds. The victory was not only a military triumph, but also a powerful statement of Greek unity and resolve. It set the stage for the ongoing conflict between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire. While Darius's initial invasion was repelled, the Persians would soon return, leading to the continuation of the Persian Wars and the eventual emergence of a new phase of Greek resistance. This early skirmish marked the beginning of a prolonged struggle that would shape the course of Greek and world history. The Greeks, having tasted victory, now stood firm in their resolve to protect their freedom against the mighty Persian Empire. The Battle of Marathon, fought in 490 BCE, stands as one of the most pivotal moments in Greek history, marking a decisive turning point in the struggle between Greece and the Persian Empire. The Persian forces, led by King Darius, had invaded Greece with the intent of punishing Athens for its role in the Ionian Revolt and asserting Persian dominance over the Greek world. The Athenians, though vastly outnumbered, decided to meet the Persian threat head-on, and their decision to engage at Marathon would become a symbol of both tactical brilliance and Greek resolve. The Athenian generals, notably Miltiades, displayed exceptional strategic foresight in their planning of the battle. The Persians, with their heavily armored infantry and cavalry, were formidable, but they had a key vulnerability. The Persian forces relied on their superior numbers and cavalry to overwhelm their enemies, but the flat, open plain of Marathon worked against them, as it provided little room for the Persian cavalry to maneuver. Miltiades seized on this advantage, positioning his troops in a manner that outflanked the Persians, while still keeping the center of the Greek line strong. By strengthening the wings of his formation and leaving the center slightly weaker, Miltiades created a trap that the Persians could not escape once the battle was engaged. When the fighting began, the Athenians charged with such ferocity that they quickly overwhelmed the Persian flanks. The Persian troops, unable to adjust to the unexpected assault, began to retreat. The center of the Persian line, despite its initial success, could not withstand the pressure as the Greeks surged forward, closing the gap. The Persian cavalry, which had been held back by the terrain, was unable to assist their infantry, and soon the Persian army was in full retreat. The Greeks, though outnumbered, won a decisive victory, killing or capturing a significant portion of the Persian forces. The retreating Persians left behind valuable equipment, including their ships, which were later burned by the victorious Athenians. The aftermath of the Battle of Marathon had profound consequences for both Greece and Persia. For Athens, it was a stunning and unexpected victory, one that brought immense pride and confidence to the city-state. The Athenians saw the victory as proof that they could stand against the mighty Persian Empire, and the success strengthened the sense of unity and resolve within the Greek world. The rise of Athenian confidence was particularly important, as it laid the foundation for the eventual formation of the Delian League and Athens' leadership in the Greek resistance against Persia. Marathon, therefore, was not just a military victory, it was a cultural and psychological triumph, one that emboldened the Greeks to continue their struggle for independence. For the Persians, the defeat at Marathon was a humiliating blow, demonstrating that their vast empire was not invincible. Darius, though enraged by the defeat, would eventually begin preparations for a second invasion, but the significance of Marathon would resonate throughout Greek history as a symbol of resistance and the ability of a small but determined force to overcome a larger, seemingly unstoppable enemy. The Battle of Thermopylae, fought in 480 BCE, remains one of the most iconic moments in history, celebrated for its dramatic display of courage and sacrifice. The Persian Empire, now under the command of Xerxes, had launched its second invasion of Greece, determined to avenge the defeat at Marathon and expand its already vast dominion. Xerxes' forces were vast, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, and their march toward Athens seemed unstoppable. The Greek city-states, in a rare moment of unity, decided to stand against the invader at Thermopylae, a narrow pass in central Greece, where their small, yet determined forces could make a stand against overwhelming numbers. King Leonidas of Sparta, accompanied by a force of 300 Spartans and several thousand allies from other Greek city-states, took the lead in defending the narrow pass. The strategic significance of Thermopylae lay in its geography. The narrow terrain meant that the Persians could not fully deploy their massive numbers, which neutralized their advantage in cavalry and infantry. The Greeks, particularly the Spartans, were seasoned warriors, trained to fight in close-knit formations that maximized their strengths. For days, they held the pass, fighting off wave after wave of Persian soldiers. Despite their overwhelming numerical disadvantage, the Greeks fought with such ferocity and discipline that they inflicted significant losses on the Persian forces. The battle became a symbol of bravery, with the Spartans leading the charge and making their stand a testament to the Spartan ideal of self-sacrifice and duty to the state. The stand at Thermopylae, though ultimately a defeat for the Greeks, had profound significance for the unity and resolve of the Greek world. The Spartans and their allies, knowing that they were likely doomed, fought with a sense of honor that inspired the rest of Greece. The battle became a rallying cry for all Greeks, demonstrating the possibility of resistance against the Persian juggernaut. The sacrifice of Leonidas and his men fueled the Greek determination to unite and push back against the invasion, culminating in the eventual Greek victories at Salamis and Plataea, which would finally end the Persian threat. The Persians, led by Xerxes, were motivated by the desire for revenge and further territorial expansion. For Xerxes, the invasion was not just a military campaign but a personal mission to assert the power of the Persian Empire and avenge the defeat his father, Darius, had suffered at Marathon. However, while the Persian army was vast, it was also unwieldy, and the battle at Thermopylae exposed the limits of such an enormous force. Despite their military prowess, the Persians could not break the determined Greek defense without heavy losses. The failure to decisively defeat the Greeks at Thermopylae, though it ultimately allowed the Persians to continue their advance, did not break the spirit of the Greek resistance. The Battle of Thermopylae became a symbol of the courage and sacrifice that would define the Greek struggle against the Persians. It demonstrated that even in the face of certain defeat, the unity and bravery of a few could inspire an entire nation to rise up against a far greater enemy. The memory of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans would endure as a beacon of heroism, a reminder of the power of resolve in the face of overwhelming odds. The Battle of Salamis, fought in 480 BCE, was a defining moment in the Greek struggle against the Persian Empire, marking a crucial turning point in the Persian Wars. After the fall of Thermopylae and the subsequent Persian occupation of Athens, the Greeks were pushed to the brink of defeat. The Persian fleet, under King Xerxes, had been sweeping through the Aegean, confident that their overwhelming numerical superiority would eventually crush any remaining Greek resistance. However, the Greeks, led by the strategic brilliance of Themistocles, still had one powerful weapon left: their navy. Themistocles, the Athenian general and statesman, had recognized early on that the key to defeating Persia lay in naval warfare. While Athens had been devastated by the Persian invasion, Themistocles knew that their survival depended on maintaining control of the sea. He persuaded the Athenians to invest in a new fleet of triremes, a type of fast, agile warship designed for close combat and maneuverability. Themistocles understood that in the narrow straits of Salamis, the Persian fleet, despite its size, would struggle to fully utilize its numbers. The narrow waters would favor the Greek ships, which could outmaneuver the larger Persian vessels, forcing them into confined spaces where their superior numbers became a disadvantage. As the two fleets met in the Straits of Salamis, the Persians, overconfident from their previous successes, were lured into a trap. Themistocles had sent a deceptive message to Xerxes, pretending to be in retreat and tempting the Persian king into a decisive confrontation. When the Persian fleet moved into the straits, they found themselves surrounded by Greek ships, unable to maneuver or use their full strength. The Greeks, with their more nimble triremes, attacked with precision, breaking the Persian lines and inflicting heavy casualties. The battle was a resounding Greek victory, and the Persian fleet was decisively defeated. The impact of the Battle of Salamis was immense. It secured the survival of Greece and delivered a crushing blow to the Persian invasion. The defeat shattered Xerxes' hopes of conquering Greece and forced him to withdraw much of his army back to Asia, leaving behind a significantly weakened Persian force. The victory also shifted the balance of power in the Aegean, with Greek naval dominance ensuring that Persia could no longer control the seas. For the Persian Empire, the consequences were far-reaching. The loss at Salamis exposed the vulnerabilities of an empire stretched too thin, relying on sheer numbers rather than strategic flexibility. While the Persians would continue to hold significant power in Asia, their dreams of further expansion into Europe were dashed. Themistocles' naval genius not only saved Greece, but also set the stage for the eventual Greek victories at Plataea and Mycale, further solidifying the decline of Persian ambitions in the Western world. In the broader scope of history, Salamis marked the moment when Greek unity and military prowess became a powerful force, capable of challenging even the might of the Persian Empire. The victory at Salamis gave the Greeks a renewed sense of confidence and identity, solidifying the idea that, united and strategic, they could withstand even the most formidable of foes. The Battle of Plataea, fought in 479 BCE, was the final, decisive confrontation that brought an end to the Persian invasion of Greece. Following their defeat at Salamis, the Persians, under the leadership of Xerxes, had retreated but still maintained a formidable presence in Greece. With the Persian threat looming large, the Greek city-states, once fragmented by rivalries, realized that only through unity could they hope to fend off the invaders and protect their lands. This realization led to the formation of the Hellenic League, a coalition of Greek states that set aside their differences to face the common enemy. The Greek forces, now united, met the Persian army at Plataea, a small town in Boeotia. The Persian army, although diminished by their naval defeat, still numbered around 100 soldiers, including elite troops such as the Persian Immortals. In contrast, the Greeks assembled a force of about 40 soldiers, primarily made up of hoplites' heavily armed infantry, who fought in close formation. Despite being outnumbered, the Greeks had one crucial advantage: unity. The city-states of Athens, Sparta, and others worked together in a coordinated effort, with the Spartans providing the bulk of the ground forces, led by Pausanias, the regent of Sparta. The battle itself unfolded on the plains of Plataea, where the Greeks used their superior tactics and training to gain the upper hand. The Persian forces, while formidable, were divided and lacked the cohesion that the Greeks had achieved. The Greek hoplites, with their tight phalanx formations, pushed forward, slowly wearing down the Persian lines. The Persian cavalry, unable to break through the Greek formations, was rendered ineffective, and the Persian infantry, already fatigued and demoralized, began to falter. What made the Greek victory at Plataea so significant was the sheer level of coordination and unity among the Greek forces. The battle was not just about individual bravery, but about a collective effort that united city-states that had once been at odds. The Spartans, with their military discipline, took the lead on the battlefield, while the Athenians, who had provided naval support during earlier battles, ensured the safety of their city by contributing forces to the land battle. This collaboration marked a pivotal shift in Greek identity, as it demonstrated that, when united, the Greek states could overcome even the most powerful of adversaries. The aftermath of the Battle of Plataea brought an end to the Persian Wars and marked the end of Persian ambitions in Greece. The Greek victory solidified the Hellenic League's dominance over the Aegean, while the Persian forces, now decimated, withdrew from the region. For the Greeks, the victory was a triumph of unity, strategy, and resilience, and it ensured their survival as independent city-states. The Persian Empire, once a powerful force in the ancient world, would no longer pose a serious threat to Greek territory. In the years following Plataea, Greece entered a new era of prosperity and cultural flourishing, with the sense of unity forged in the fires of war paving the way for the classical period of Greek civilization. The end of the Persian Wars marked not only the defeat of an empire but also the beginning of a golden age for the Greeks, who would go on to shape the future of Western civilization. The Delian League was established in 478 BCE, shortly after the Greek victory over Persia at Plataea. Its creation was driven by a collective desire among the Greek city-states to protect their independence from further Persian aggression. Initially, the League was formed as a defensive alliance, with member states contributing ships, money, or resources to defend the Aegean and the Greek mainland from Persian retribution. The League's headquarters were located on the island of Delos, symbolizing its role as a collective defense against a common enemy. At first, the Delian League was a loosely organized coalition of independent Greek states, each retaining its sovereignty. However, over time, Athens began to assert increasing control over the League, both politically and militarily. Athens, with its powerful navy and its strategic position in the Aegean, quickly became the dominant force within the alliance. The Athenians understood the importance of the naval power they had developed during the Persian Wars, and they used this influence to direct the League's activities. The initial contributions to the League were intended for defense, but as Athens' role grew, so did its power. The League's treasury, once housed on Delos, was moved to Athens in 454 BCE, a clear sign of Athens' growing dominance. Over time, the Athenians began to exert more control over the League's decisions, turning the once defensive alliance into a tool for Athenian expansion. The League's contributions, originally voluntary, became a form of tribute, and many of the smaller city-states found themselves increasingly subjugated by Athens' power. These smaller members were coerced into contributing resources, while Athens, under the guise of defense, expanded its influence throughout the Aegean world. Athens' transformation of the Delian League into an empire marked the rise of Athenian naval and political power. The city's fleet, which had proven its effectiveness during the Persian Wars, now became a symbol of Athenian supremacy. The Athenian navy dominated the Aegean Sea, allowing Athens to control trade routes, collect tribute, and maintain its influence over the League's member states. The Athenians built their empire on the strength of their fleet, using it not only for defense, but for aggressive expansion as well. This period of Athenian dominance saw a flourishing of Athenian culture, art, and philosophy, often referred to as the Golden Age of Athens. The city became the center of intellectual and artistic life, attracting scholars, artists, and playwrights from all over Greece. Politically, Athens became a symbol of democracy, with its assembly and institutions drawing attention for their openness and participation. Yet, this period was also marked by the contradictions of empire. While Athens was celebrated for its democratic ideals, it simultaneously ruled over a vast empire of subject states that had little say in their governance. Athens' increasing control over the Delian League and its transformation into an empire brought both prosperity, conflict. While Athens became the greatest power in the Greek world, its dominance sparked resentment among other city-states, setting the stage for the eventual conflicts that would challenge its imperial ambitions, most notably the Peloponnesian War. Nevertheless, the rise of Athenian naval and political power during this period left an indelible mark on Greek history and the development of Western civilization. The 5th century BCE marked the pinnacle of Athenian culture, known as its Golden Age. Athens, under the leadership of Pericles, became the intellectual and artistic heart of the Greek world, setting the stage for a flourishing of philosophy, art, and science that would echo through history. The city's influence extended far beyond military victories and imperial control. It was a period defined by groundbreaking achievements in nearly every field of human endeavor. One of the most iconic symbols of this era is the Parthenon, a magnificent temple dedicated to Athena, the city's patron goddess. The Parthenon, located on the Athenian Acropolis, was constructed between 447 and 438 BCE and stood as a testament to the power, wealth, and artistic vision of Athens. Designed by the architects Iktinos and Callicrates, with the renowned sculptor Phidias overseeing the artistic work, the Parthenon became not just a religious monument, but a symbol of Athenian civic pride and cultural supremacy. Its Doric columns, perfect proportions, and the intricacy of its sculptural decorations reflected the heights of Greek architectural and artistic achievement. The Parthenon's grandeur mirrored the confidence of Athens, which, under Pericles, was at the height of its political and cultural influence. The Golden Age also saw an explosion in the fields of philosophy and science, largely due to the intellectual climate fostered in Athens. Philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shaped the future of Western thought, exploring fundamental questions about ethics, knowledge, and the nature of reality. Socrates, with his probing questions and dialectical method, encouraged Athenians to examine their lives and beliefs more deeply. Plato, his most famous student, founded the Academy, where he sought to understand the ideal state and the nature of knowledge. Aristotle, who studied at Plato's Academy, went on to become the tutor of Alexander the Great and made contributions to virtually every area of philosophy and science. These philosophers, among others, established Athens as the intellectual center of the ancient world, where ideas were debated and refined in the public sphere. Art and theatre also thrived during the Golden Age, with playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides writing masterpieces that remain central to Western literature. Their tragedies explored complex themes of fate, justice, and human nature, while the comedies of Aristophanes offered sharp political satire. Sculpture, too, flourished, with figures such as Phidias, creating masterpieces that emphasized both the divine and human form, capturing the ideals of beauty, proportion, and harmony that defined the period. At the heart of this cultural explosion was Pericles, whose leadership guided Athens through this period of unprecedented achievement. Under his influence, Athens developed its democracy to its fullest extent, with every male citizen having a say in the affairs of the city through the assembly. Pericles' leadership was marked by his commitment to public works, education, and the arts, making Athens a beacon of democracy and culture in the ancient world. His vision not only enhanced Athens' political system, but also ensured its lasting legacy in the fields of philosophy, art, and architecture. The Golden Age of Athens came to an end with the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, but the cultural and intellectual achievements of this period would continue to influence civilizations for centuries to come. Athens' legacy, shaped by its democratic ideals, its devotion to the arts, and its intellectual pursuits, has remained a cornerstone of Western civilization. The Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta from 431 to 404 BCE, was one of the most devastating conflicts in ancient Greek history. It was a war that pitted two very different systems against each other: the democratic, naval power of Athens versus the militaristic, land-based power of Sparta. But the causes of this prolonged and destructive war went beyond mere territorial disputes. They were rooted in deep-seated political, economic, and cultural differences between the two powers, as well as their growing rivalry for supremacy in the Greek world. The immediate cause of the war was Athens' growing influence after the Persian Wars. Through the formation of the Delian League, Athens had built a powerful navy and secured control over much of the Aegean Sea. This expansion of power was viewed with increasing suspicion by Sparta and its allies in the Peloponnesian League. The fear of Athenian imperialism, combined with Sparta's commitment to maintaining its dominance in the Peloponnesian region, set the stage for war. Tensions escalated when a series of smaller conflicts broke out between Athens and its allies, as well as between Sparta and its own allies, creating an environment ripe for a full-scale war. At the outset of the conflict, both sides experienced early successes and setbacks. Sparta, known for its powerful army and land-based warfare, initially had the upper hand in the early years. The Spartan forces, led by the experienced king Archidamus II, invaded the territory surrounding Athens. However, the Athenians, under the leadership of Pericles, avoided direct confrontation with the Spartan forces, instead relying on their superior navy and the strategy of avoiding land battles. Pericles' strategy involved retreating behind the walls of Athens, relying on naval raids to harass the Peloponnesian coast. This strategy allowed Athens to maintain its position but also had its own risks, including the vulnerability of the city to a devastating plague that struck in 430 BCE, killing a large portion of the population, including Pericles himself. As the war continued, both sides adjusted their strategies. Athens, weakened by the plague and internal political struggles, suffered a series of military setbacks. However, the city still maintained a formidable navy and sought to extend its influence beyond Greece by pursuing an aggressive campaign in Sicily. This expedition, aimed at gaining more territory and resources, ended disastrously for Athens, weakening its position further and allowing Sparta to regain momentum. Sparta, meanwhile, adapted its strategy by forming an alliance with the Persian Empire, gaining financial support that allowed them to build a navy capable of challenging Athens on the seas. With the help of Persian funds, Sparta's navy, commanded by Lysander, eventually defeated the Athenians in a decisive naval battle at Aegospotami in 405 BCE. This defeat, combined with internal dissent within Athens and the continued strain of the war, led to Athens' surrender in 404 BCE, effectively ending the Peloponnesian War. The war, which had lasted nearly 3 decades, had far-reaching consequences for the Greek world. It resulted in the collapse of Athenian power and the temporary ascension of Sparta as the dominant power in Greece. However, the war had also left both city-states weakened, and their mutual exhaustion paved the way for the rise of Macedon under Philip II. The Peloponnesian War revealed the dangers of political divisions, the consequences of war strategies that ignored diplomacy, and the deep impact of prolonged conflict on the fabric of Greek society. The fall of Athens marked the end of its golden age and signified a dramatic shift in the balance of power in the ancient Greek world. During the later stages of the Peloponnesian War, Athens began to experience a rapid decline in power, both militarily and politically. The war, which had dragged on for nearly 3 decades, had exhausted the city's resources and morale. Initially, Athens had been a dominant force in the Greek world, but as the war stretched on, it became increasingly clear that the city-state was no longer the invincible power it once was. Internal strife played a significant role in Athens' downfall. After the death of Pericles and the subsequent onset of a devastating plague in 430 BCE, Athens was left without strong, unifying leadership. The plague ravaged the city, killing a significant portion of its population, including many of its best leaders. This loss of leadership fractured the Athenian political system, with competing factions vying for power. The once cohesive democratic structure began to erode, and corruption and infighting became more prevalent. The lack of unity within Athens weakened its ability to effectively manage both the war effort and its internal affairs. As the war dragged on, Athens' military defeats mounted. The disastrous Sicilian expedition in 415 BCE, in which Athens attempted to expand its influence into Sicily, resulted in the near destruction of its fleet. This catastrophic failure severely diminished Athenian naval power, which had been a key asset throughout the conflict. Sparta, with the help of Persian financial support, rebuilt its navy and gained control of the seas. The Athenians, unable to recover from this blow, found themselves increasingly vulnerable. Strategic military losses, coupled with the growing strength of Sparta's alliance, further sapped Athens' strength. The final blow came in 404 BCE, when the Athenian fleet was decisively defeated at Aegospotami. Without naval supremacy, Athens could no longer defend its shores or maintain its empire. With food supplies cut off and the city surrounded, Athens had no choice but to surrender to Sparta. The terms of surrender were harsh. Athens was forced to dismantle its walls, disband its empire, and accept Spartan hegemony in the Greek world. The once glorious city-state that had led the Greeks to victory in the Persian wars and flourished as a center of art, philosophy, and democracy was now reduced to a shadow of its former self. The fall of Athens marked the end of the Golden Age and left a profound impact on the Greek world. The city's defeat signaled the collapse of Athenian democracy and the rise of Sparta as the dominant power in Greece, though this would be short-lived. Athens' cultural and intellectual legacy, however, would endure, influencing the development of Western civilization for centuries to come. Despite the city's physical defeat, its contributions to philosophy, art, and politics would continue to resonate long after its political power had faded. The rise of Macedonia as a powerful Greek state under King Philip II marked a turning point in the history of Greece. Prior to Philip's reign, Macedonia had been a relatively obscure region on the fringes of the Greek world. However, under his leadership, it transformed into a dominant military and political power that would eventually control all of Greece. Philip II, ascending to the throne in 359 BCE, inherited a kingdom weakened by internal strife and external threats. Yet, through a combination of military genius, strategic alliances, and relentless ambition, he laid the foundation for what would become the Macedonian Empire. Philip's first major accomplishment was to consolidate control over Macedonia itself. He strengthened the internal structure of the kingdom by stabilizing its economy and society, which had been fractured by years of conflict. Once the Macedonian throne was secure, Philip turned his attention to the surrounding Greek city-states. Unlike the previous rulers who had failed to unite Greece, Philip used both diplomacy and force to bring the Greek world under Macedonian influence. By 338 BCE, he had successfully defeated the Greek city-states at the Battle of Chaeronea, effectively ending their resistance and unifying Greece under Macedonian control. Although many city-states, including Athens, had retained their independence, they were now forced into an alliance with Macedonia, giving Philip significant influence over the Greek world. Central to Philip II's success was his reform of the Macedonian military. Understanding the limitations of traditional Greek phalanx warfare, Philip introduced the sarissa, a long spear that was longer than the traditional Greek spear and gave his soldiers greater reach and flexibility in battle. This innovation, along with a reorganization of the infantry and cavalry, transformed the Macedonian army into an unstoppable force. Philip's army was more disciplined, more maneuverable, and better equipped than any other in Greece. His military reforms also included the establishment of a professional standing army, which ensured that Macedonia was always prepared for war and could project its power throughout Greece and beyond. Philip's military success was not only due to his innovations on the battlefield, but also to his ability to forge strategic alliances. He skillfully used marriage alliances to strengthen his position, marrying several women from powerful Greek city-states and neighboring regions. These alliances helped to neutralize potential threats and secure peace on Macedonia's borders, allowing him to focus on expanding his influence in Greece. His efforts to unite the Greek world under a single banner culminated in the creation of the Corinthian League, a federation of Greek states that was essentially controlled by Macedonia, with Philip as its leader. The rise of Macedonia under Philip II fundamentally changed the political landscape of Greece. His conquests laid the groundwork for the expansion of his son, Alexander the Great, who would go on to create one of the largest empires in history. While Philip did not live to see his son's incredible achievements, his military reforms and political maneuvering were instrumental in making those accomplishments possible. Under Philip, Macedonia became the dominant power in Greece, and the legacy of his reign would echo through the ages. Alexander the Great's rise to power was inevitable given the groundwork laid by his father, Philip II. Born in 356 BCE, Alexander was groomed for leadership from an early age. His father's military genius and political unification of Greece set the stage for his son's extraordinary career. After Philip's assassination in 336 BCE, Alexander ascended to the throne at the age of 20. Although his youth raised doubts about his ability to lead, he quickly silenced his critics with his bold decisions and unmatched determination. From the beginning of his reign, Alexander showed remarkable resolve in maintaining his father's empire. He quickly dealt with any potential threats to his rule, quelling rebellions in Greece and securing Macedonia's hold over the Greek city-states. However, Alexander's ambitions were far beyond simply maintaining his inheritance. His education under the philosopher Aristotle shaped his worldview and inspired his vision of spreading Greek culture and knowledge across the known world. Aristotle's teachings instilled in Alexander a deep appreciation for philosophy, science, and the arts, which would later influence the cultural legacy of his conquests. Alexander's ambition to expand his empire beyond Greece took shape with his planned invasion of Persia. His dream of creating a world empire was not just about military conquest. It was also driven by a desire to unite East and West under one ruler, promoting Greek culture while respecting the traditions of the lands he would conquer. The Persian Empire, under King Darius III, stood as the dominant power in the region, and its defeat would secure Alexander's place in history. In 334 BCE, Alexander led his army across the Hellespont into Asia Minor, beginning a campaign that would forever alter the course of history. The early stages of Alexander's military campaigns were marked by rapid success and exceptional strategic brilliance. His first significant victory came at the Battle of the Granicus River, where he decisively defeated a Persian force, solidifying his control over Asia Minor. From there, Alexander's campaign moved swiftly, with each victory building upon the last. At the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE, Alexander once again faced Darius III in a head-on confrontation. The Persian king's army vastly outnumbered Alexander's, but the Macedonian king's superior tactics and the discipline of his troops led to a crushing victory. Alexander's swift progress continued through Syria and Egypt, where he was hailed as a liberator, further solidifying his reputation as an extraordinary leader. In Egypt, he founded the city of Alexandria, which would become a center of Greek culture and learning. The conquest of Persia culminated in the famous Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, where Alexander decisively defeated Darius III and effectively ended Persian control over the region. Despite Darius's efforts to flee, his empire crumbled under Alexander's relentless pursuit. With the defeat of Persia, Alexander became the ruler of a vast empire that stretched from Greece to Egypt and into the heart of Asia. His military brilliance, unyielding vision, and relentless ambition left an indelible mark on history, forever changing the political and cultural landscape of the ancient world. Alexander's conquest of Persia was a series of remarkable military victories that redefined the boundaries of the ancient world. After crossing into Asia Minor, Alexander faced the mighty Persian Empire, led by King Darius III. The first major confrontation came at the Battle of the Granicus River in 334 BCE. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Alexander's forces decisively defeated the Persian army, securing a foothold in Asia Minor. This victory was a testament to Alexander's brilliant military strategies, which combined speed, surprise, and the disciplined use of his cavalry. It was a clear signal to the Persians that their empire was in jeopardy. With his first victory behind him, Alexander continued his relentless advance, capturing key Persian territories, including the rich cities of Asia Minor. His next major battle came at Issus in 333 BCE, where he again faced Darius III. Despite Darius's superior numbers, Alexander's forces once again emerged victorious. The battle took place in a narrow pass, which nullified the Persian cavalry advantage, allowing Alexander to capitalize on his tactical brilliance. Darius, unable to rally his forces, fled the battlefield, marking a turning point in the Persian War. Following this victory, Alexander's fame spread, and many Persian cities welcomed him as a liberator. The pursuit of Darius was relentless, and in 331 BCE, Alexander met the Persian king for their final confrontation at the Battle of Gaugamela. This battle, one of the most decisive of Alexander's career, took place on open plains, where the Persian army, despite its size and strength, was outmaneuvered by Alexander's swift and strategic use of terrain. Darius III's forces crumbled under Alexander's assault, and the Persian king fled, leaving his empire in disarray. With this victory, Alexander had not only defeated the Persian army, but had effectively ended the Persian Empire. Darius was eventually found dead, leaving Alexander as the uncontested ruler of the vast Persian territories. The fall of the Persian Empire marked the end of an era in the ancient world. Persia's once great empire, which had spanned from Egypt to India, was now absorbed into Alexander's growing kingdom. However, Alexander's rule was not solely about military conquest. He sought to merge the cultures of Greece and Persia, believing that the blending of the two would create a stronger, more unified empire. His policy of cultural fusion included marrying Persian women, encouraging Greek settlers in conquered territories, and adopting some elements of Persian customs and governance. Alexander's vision for a Hellenistic world was one where Greek culture, philosophy, and science would spread throughout the regions he conquered, creating a new, integrated society. The foundation of cities like Alexandria in Egypt was part of this vision, as they became centers of learning and cultural exchange. Through Alexander's conquests, Greek influence would spread across much of the ancient world, marking the beginning of the Hellenistic era. His legacy, although short-lived, would forever change the course of history, blending Eastern and Western cultures in a way that would influence the development of the ancient world for centuries to come. Alexander's campaign in Egypt was marked by swift victories and strategic brilliance. After his triumphs against the Persian Empire, Egypt fell under his control without much resistance. The Egyptians, who had been under Persian rule for several years, welcomed Alexander as a liberator. His arrival in Egypt in 332 BCE was seen as a divine intervention, and the local population, eager for freedom from Persian dominance, quickly aligned themselves with him. Alexander's forces marched into Egypt, and the people greeted him with reverence, heralding him as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. The conquest of Egypt allowed Alexander to solidify his position as a ruler who bridged cultures and territories. Recognizing the importance of Egypt as a major cultural and economic hub, he sought to make it a cornerstone of his vast empire. It was during this time that Alexander founded the city of Alexandria, which would become one of the most famous cities of the ancient world. Situated along the Nile Delta, Alexandria was strategically placed to serve as a link between the Mediterranean world and the cultures of the East. It was not just a military outpost, but a center of commerce, learning, and cultural exchange. The city would eventually house the Great Library of Alexandria, which would become a beacon of knowledge in the ancient world, attracting scholars, philosophers, and scientists from all over the Mediterranean. While in Egypt, Alexander also took a step to cement his divine status. He traveled to the oracle of Amun-Ra at the Siwa oasis in the Libyan desert, seeking confirmation of his legitimacy and divine favor. The oracle's response, declaring Alexander the son of Amun, aligned him with the gods and reinforced his authority. This proclamation elevated Alexander's status, not only as a military conqueror, but as a god-king. His recognition as pharaoh further cemented his control over Egypt and demonstrated his ability to unite both Greek and Egyptian traditions. By adopting the title of pharaoh and engaging in Egyptian religious practices, he endeared himself to the local populace while maintaining his Greek identity. Alexander's time in Egypt, though brief, had lasting consequences. His actions in the region were not just about conquest, but about creating a legacy. The foundation of Alexandria was a testament to his vision for a Hellenistic world, where Greek culture would spread throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond. In Egypt, Alexander saw an opportunity to blend Greek and Egyptian traditions, and through his leadership, he became a symbol of unity. His divinity was recognized not only by the Greeks, but also by the Egyptians, who saw him as the divine ruler they had longed for. This divine status would continue to shape Alexander's reputation throughout his life and after his death, as his empire and influence transcended the borders of the known world. In 326 BCE, Alexander's journey eastward took him to the borders of India, where he encountered the vast, unknown lands that lay beyond the Persian Empire. With his ambition unyielding, he pressed on, eager to conquer the world. The most significant battle of his Indian campaign came at the Battle of the Hydaspes, fought against King Porus, the ruler of a region between the Jhelum and Indus rivers. Porus, a formidable and well-equipped ruler, mounted a stiff resistance, but Alexander's strategic genius and his army's training led to a decisive victory. Despite facing the challenges of monsoon rains and the difficult terrain, Alexander's forces proved to be superior, using clever tactics to outflank the Indian army and secure the victory. The battle, however, was not without its cost. The fierce encounter left many of Alexander's men exhausted and wounded, particularly due to the challenging environment and the powerful Indian war elephants that Porus employed. Despite this victory, Alexander was struck by the courage and resilience of King Porus, whom he had captured, but later reinstated as the ruler of his territory, displaying his respect for a worthy adversary. This moment marked a significant point in Alexander's campaign, as he began to realize that the further he ventured east, the more formidable the opponents became, and the terrain became increasingly difficult for his army to navigate. The Indian campaign, although a triumph in military terms, also introduced a serious toll on Alexander's troops. The soldiers, worn from years of campaigning across vast territories, began to show signs of fatigue and frustration. The desire to march further into the subcontinent dwindled when they reached the Beas River, where they refused to go any farther. They had fought countless battles, marched through deserts and mountains, and endured the unknown, But the prospect of further campaigns into the harsh and uncharted land of India was too much. Despite Alexander's passionate speeches, encouraging his army to push forward, the soldiers, who had been away from home for years, were resolute in their decision to turn back. This moment marked the end of Alexander's eastward expansion. His ambition to conquer all of India was left unfulfilled, and the retreat from India represented a major turning point in his campaign. Though Alexander was frustrated, the decision to turn back at the Beas River reflected the limits of even his remarkable resolve. The decision to halt his advance marked a dramatic shift in the morale of his army, and the return journey was fraught with further challenges. As his forces made their way back to Babylon, the strains of the campaign, coupled with a deep longing for home, began to take their toll. The impact of the Indian campaign on Alexander's army was profound, as it became clear that, despite his military brilliance, even the greatest conqueror could not overcome the will of his men. After the retreat from India, Alexander began the long journey back to Babylon, the heart of his empire. The march was grueling, marked by difficult terrain, scorching deserts, and the weariness of an army that had been campaigning for years. The soldiers, tired from battles across multiple continents, longed for rest and a return to their homeland. Along the way, Alexander made stops to reorganize his empire, securing the regions he had conquered and ensuring their stability. Yet, the journey was not kind to his health. The harsh conditions, coupled with the toll of incessant campaigning, began to take a heavy toll on his body. In the spring of 323 BCE, Alexander arrived in Babylon, where he planned to consolidate his rule and perhaps launch further expeditions. But fate had other plans. Within a few days of his arrival, Alexander fell gravely ill. What started as a fever rapidly deteriorated into a more serious condition, and his health declined sharply. Despite the efforts of his doctors, who were among the best in the ancient world, Alexander's condition worsened. Over the course of several days, he became increasingly feverish and weak. On June 10th or 11th, he died in the palace at the age of 32. The mystery surrounding Alexander's death has captivated historians and scholars for centuries. Some believed that he had been poisoned, a theory that has persisted since antiquity. The idea that his closest companions or political rivals may have orchestrated his death remains a popular but unproven notion. Others argue that Alexander died of natural causes, such as a fever brought on by malaria or typhoid, diseases that were common in the ancient world. The exact cause of his death remains a mystery, but the fact that he died so suddenly and at the height of his power only added to the intrigue surrounding his passing. Alexander's death marked the end of an era and sent shockwaves through his empire. With no clear heir to inherit the throne, his death sparked a struggle for power among his generals, known as the Diadochi. These men, once loyal companions, now vied for control over the vast territories Alexander had created. His empire, which had stretched from Greece to India, began to fragment into smaller kingdoms, each ruled by one of his former generals. The political instability that followed his death led to decades of warfare, as these generals fought for dominance, and the dream of a unified Hellenistic empire dissipated. In the aftermath of his death, the question of succession remained unresolved. Alexander had not designated a clear successor, and his son, Alexander IV, was an infant at the time of his death. This left his empire vulnerable to internal divisions, and his legacy was fractured as his generals turned on each other, dividing the territories into independent kingdoms. Alexander's vision of a unified empire under his rule faded, but his cultural impact endured. His conquests had spread Greek culture throughout the ancient world, and the Hellenistic period, characterized by the blending of Greek and Eastern cultures, would shape the course of history for centuries to come. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his vast empire, stretching from Greece to India, was left without a clear heir. His only legitimate successor was his infant son, Alexander IV, but as a mere child, he was powerless to assume control. In the absence of a strong leader, his generals, known as the Diadochi, seized the opportunity to carve out their own domains from the empire. These men, once loyal companions and commanders under Alexander's banner, now found themselves vying for supremacy, leading to a series of conflicts that would define the next several decades. The empire's division was neither smooth nor peaceful. The Diadochi, including figures like Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus, and Lysimachus, each sought to secure and expand their territories, often at the expense of their former allies. Initially, an agreement known as the Partition of Babylon was made in an attempt to divide the empire peacefully. Under this agreement, the major regions were allocated among the generals, with Ptolemy receiving Egypt, Seleucus taking the eastern provinces, and Antigonus claiming much of Asia Minor and the heart of the empire. However, this division proved to be only temporary, as rivalries soon escalated into full-blown warfare. As the Diadochi fought to solidify their power, the once unified empire splintered into several Hellenistic kingdoms. Ptolemy's Egypt became one of the most stable and prosperous of these, with its capital, Alexandria, growing into a major center of learning and culture. Seleucus established the Seleucid Empire, which spanned from Asia Minor to India and sought to build a lasting legacy through the spread of Greek culture and cities. Meanwhile, Antigonus attempted to maintain his claim over much of the former Macedonian heartland, but was eventually defeated by the coalition of his rivals, leading to the rise of Lysimachus in Thrace. The power struggles between the Diadochi and their successors were intense, with alliances forming and breaking as the generals tried to gain the upper hand. Each battle was not just about territorial control, but also about preserving the legacy of Alexander and his vision for a united world. The conflicts that followed, known as the Wars of the Diadochi, spanned several decades, with shifting alliances, betrayals, and the rise and fall of key figures. Despite the fragmentation of Alexander's empire, the Hellenistic period witnessed the spread of Greek culture, language, and ideas across much of the ancient world. These wars and the resulting divisions left a lasting mark on the political landscape of the ancient Mediterranean. The Hellenistic kingdoms, though often in conflict with one another, shared a common cultural heritage rooted in Greek traditions. The empire may have been shattered, but the influence of Alexander's conquests endured. The Greek language became the lingua franca of much of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East, and the Hellenistic kingdoms flourished in their own right, creating a new era of cultural exchange and intellectual progress. However, the division of Alexander's empire also marked the end of a unified world empire and the beginning of an age of fractured power where individual kingdoms would battle for dominance. Long after the death of their great conqueror, after the division of Alexander's empire, the Hellenistic world emerged, shaped by the ambitions of the Diadochi. The Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in the east, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedon were the most notable of these newly established Hellenistic states. Each ruler sought to continue Alexander's vision of a unified world, but in their own way. Egypt, under the Ptolemies, became a thriving center of culture and commerce, with Alexandria at its heart. The Seleucid Empire, spanning from Anatolia to the Indian subcontinent, was vast, but its vastness led to internal struggles that weakened it over time. The Antigonid dynasty, based in Macedon, struggled to maintain the unity of Alexander's legacy. The Hellenistic kingdoms were characterized by the blending of Greek culture with local traditions. This fusion was particularly evident in the arts, where Greek styles were merged with those of Persia, Egypt, and India. Greek gods and heroes were adopted by local populations, while Greek cities and their institutions spread across the former Persian Empire and beyond. In Egypt, the Ptolemies, although of Greek origin, embraced the Egyptian way of life, taking on the role of pharaohs, participating in Egyptian religious practices, and fostering a cultural environment that bridged Greek and Egyptian worlds. The Seleucid kings, similarly, sought to integrate Greek governance and culture with the Persian and Indian traditions of their vast territories. Greek influence also spread far beyond the borders of the Hellenistic kingdoms. The language of Greek became the lingua franca of trade, diplomacy, and culture across the Mediterranean and into Asia. Greek-speaking cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, and Seleucia became major cultural hubs, attracting scholars, artists, and philosophers from all parts of the empire. The blending of Greek and local traditions gave rise to new forms of art, philosophy, and science. The Hellenistic period saw the rise of philosophers such as Zeno and Epicurus, who shaped the intellectual landscape, while in Alexandria, the library became one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. The spread of Greek culture, however, was not without resistance. Many local traditions and religions persisted, often blending with Greek influences, but at times these cultures pushed back against foreign dominance. Nevertheless, the reach of Greek culture left a lasting impact. Hellenistic architecture, with its monumental structures and city planning, spread to the farthest corners of the former empire, while Greek language and customs established the foundation for the cultural identity of future empires, including Rome. In the end, the Hellenistic kingdoms left a legacy of cultural exchange and synthesis. They created a new world that blended East and West, forging connections that would influence the course of history long after the collapse of these kingdoms. The influence of Alexander's conquests endured in the cities he founded, the knowledge he spread, and the cultural fusion that defined the age. The Hellenistic world may have been divided, but the echoes of its cultural impact reverberated across time and space. Rome's rise from a small city-state to a mighty empire is a story of persistence, military genius, and strategic alliances. Founded in the 8th century BCE, Rome began as a humble settlement on the banks of the Tiber River, influenced by its Etruscan neighbors and the Greek colonies along the southern coast. Over time, however, it would grow from a collection of villages into a powerful force that would reshape the Mediterranean world. The Romans were keenly aware of their surroundings, and as they expanded, they forged a culture and identity that would eventually rival the greatest civilizations of the ancient world. Rome's military campaigns were central to its early growth. It began by unifying the Latin tribes in central Italy, defeating neighboring peoples such as the Samnites and Etruscans. These early victories established Rome's dominance over the region, but its ambitions were far from satisfied. As the city-state expanded, it clashed with the Greek colonies in the south, which had long been under the influence of Greek culture. The Romans, however, viewed these Greek city-states not just as rivals, but as vital obstacles to their ultimate dominance over the Mediterranean. Rome's conflict with the Greek colonies culminated in the Pyrrhic War, 280–275 BCE, where the Roman legions finally defeated King Pyrrhus of Epirus, whose army was strengthened by Greek mercenaries. This victory paved the way for Roman control of the entire Italian peninsula. As Rome's power grew, it found itself embroiled in a series of wars with the Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged after Alexander's empire collapsed. These wars, particularly the Macedonian Wars, saw Rome's victory over the last of the Hellenistic monarchies. By the end of the 12th century BCE, Rome had become the dominant power in the Mediterranean, absorbing the Greek territories into its vast empire. The conquest of Greece in 146 BCE, after the destruction of Corinth, solidified Rome's position and marked the official end of Greek political independence. However, while the Greeks lost their political power, their cultural influence would continue to shape Roman society in profound ways. Greek culture became deeply embedded in Roman life, especially in the fields of art, philosophy, and education. Romans admired the Greeks' intellectual achievements, and many wealthy Roman families employed Greek tutors for their children. The influence of Greek philosophy, particularly Stoicism and Epicureanism, was especially strong among Roman elites. Greek art and architecture also had a lasting impact on Roman buildings, statues, and public spaces. The Romans adopted the Greek style of sculpture and even began to build temples modeled after the Greeks, incorporating Greek gods and mythology into their own religious practices. In turn, the Romans adapted and refined many of the cultural elements they inherited from the Greeks, making them their own. The synthesis of Greek and Roman traditions laid the foundation for what would become the Roman Empire's unique identity, one that blended both military might and intellectual achievement. Rome's embrace of Greek culture was not just a form of admiration, but also a way to strengthen its own identity as it expanded its influence across the ancient world. This fusion of Greek and Roman cultures became one of the most enduring legacies of the Roman Empire. The Hellenistic period, stretching from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE to the rise of Rome, marked a significant transformation in art and architecture. As Greek influence spread across a vast territory from Greece to Egypt and into Persia, it absorbed the customs, traditions, and artistic practices of the diverse cultures it encountered. The result was a unique blending of Greek, Egyptian, and Persian elements, which gave rise to a rich and dynamic artistic tradition that would shape the course of Western art for centuries to come. One of the most striking features of Hellenistic art is its focus on realism and emotion. Unlike the idealized forms of earlier Greek art, which sought to represent beauty and perfection, Hellenistic artists emphasized the human experience, capturing a wide range of emotions and moments of everyday life. Sculptures such as the Laocoön group, which depicts the anguished moment of the Trojan priest Laocoön and his sons struggling with serpents, exemplify this shift toward dramatic intensity. The physical realism in the muscles, the tension in the poses, and the agony on the faces of the figures are a far cry from the serene, idealized statues of gods and athletes seen in the classical period. Hellenistic art, therefore, conveyed a greater emotional depth, engaging the viewer not just with beauty, but with the rawness of human suffering and triumph. In architecture, the Hellenistic period saw the introduction of more diverse and complex forms. The Greeks had long been known for their mastery of columned temples and public buildings, but as they encountered different cultures, these designs began to evolve. In Egypt, for example, Greek architects incorporated monumental structures inspired by Egyptian temples, such as the Pharos of Alexandria, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Similarly, the Persians' influence is visible in the grandiose scale of many Hellenistic structures, like the palace at Persepolis, whose columns and gateways inspired later Hellenistic designs. Hellenistic art was also greatly influenced by the various kingdoms that emerged after Alexander's death. The Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, for instance, merged Greek artistic forms with Egyptian symbolism, resulting in works that reflected both Hellenistic style and Egyptian reverence for the divine. The Alexandrian school of sculpture, renowned for its lifelike statues of rulers and gods, became a center for artistic innovation, merging traditional Greek styles with local cultural themes. Meanwhile, in the Seleucid Empire, Greek techniques blended with Persian artistic elements, creating hybrid forms that represented a fusion of the East and West. The lasting impact of Hellenistic art can be seen in the art and architecture of Rome, which absorbed and adapted much of Hellenistic style. The Romans, with their appreciation for grandeur and detail, took inspiration from the dramatic realism of Hellenistic sculptures, as well as the use of space and light in Hellenistic architecture. Even today, Hellenistic art continues to influence Western art, from the Renaissance's revival of classical themes to the dramatic sculptures and architecture of the Baroque period. The Hellenistic period thus left an indelible mark on the trajectory of art history, merging cultures, ideas, and artistic expressions in ways that resonate through the ages. Greek philosophy emerged as a powerful force that shaped the intellectual landscape of the ancient world and laid the foundations for much of Western thought. It was during the 6th century BCE that the first philosophers, known as the pre-Socratics, began questioning the nature of existence, the cosmos, and human understanding. These thinkers, including figures like Thales, Heraclitus, and Pythagoras, sought to explain the world through rational inquiry rather than mythological explanations. Thales, for example, posited that water was the fundamental substance of the universe, while Heraclitus famously asserted that everything is in constant flux, captured by his phrase, "You cannot step into the same river twice." These early philosophers marked a shift from mythological thinking to a more systematic exploration of the world through logic and observation, as the four pre-Socratics laid the groundwork for philosophical thought. Socrates, 469–399 BCE, emerged as a central figure in Greek philosophy. Unlike his predecessors, who focused on cosmological questions, Socrates turned his attention to ethics and human behavior. He sought to understand the nature of virtue, justice, and the good life. Through his method of questioning, now known as the Socratic method, he encouraged others to examine their beliefs and assumptions, prompting deeper self-awareness and intellectual honesty. Socrates did not leave any written works, and most of what we know about him comes from the writings of his student Plato. Plato, who founded the Academy in Athens, was one of the most influential philosophers in Western history. In his dialogues, Plato explored a wide range of topics, including justice, politics, metaphysics, and the nature of knowledge. His theory of the forms, which posited that the physical world is only a shadow of a higher, perfect reality, was groundbreaking. According to Plato, true knowledge could only be attained by contemplating these ideal forms, rather than relying on the senses. Plato's work laid the foundation for much of Western philosophy, particularly in areas such as epistemology and ethics, and his influence continued through the centuries. Aristotle, Plato's student, was another towering figure in Greek philosophy. While Plato focused on abstract, ideal forms, Aristotle grounded his philosophy in empirical observation and the study of the natural world. Aristotle's contributions spanned numerous fields, including logic, metaphysics, biology, ethics, and political theory. His method of categorizing knowledge and his emphasis on reason became central to later intellectual traditions. In ethics, Aristotle's concept of the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies between extremes, has had a lasting impact on moral philosophy. The legacy of Greek philosophy is immeasurable. The works of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle have influenced every major branch of Western thought, from science and politics to ethics and metaphysics. The Socratic method remains a cornerstone of modern education, while Plato's exploration of ideal forms influenced Christian theology and later philosophical movements. Aristotle's empirical approach laid the groundwork for the scientific method, and his ideas on ethics and politics continue to shape contemporary debates. Greek philosophy, through its exploration of reason, ethics, and knowledge, provided a framework that has shaped Western intellectual thought for over 2 millennia. Greek science and mathematics stand as pillars of intellectual achievement, shaping the trajectory of Western thought and laying the foundations for modern science. In ancient Greece, the desire to understand the natural world and its underlying principles sparked a flourishing of intellectual exploration. Early Greek thinkers began to move away from mythological explanations and looked instead to reason, observation, and logic to explain the phenomena around them. Mathematics was one of the most significant areas of development. Figures like Pythagoras revolutionized the field by introducing the concept of numbers as the key to understanding the cosmos. Pythagoras, famous for the Pythagorean theorem, believed that everything in the universe could be understood through numerical relationships. His ideas about numbers and their mystical significance influenced not only mathematics, but also the later development of philosophy and science. The Pythagorean school laid the groundwork for the study of geometry and the concept of mathematical proofs, a critical shift in how knowledge was pursued. Euclid, often referred to as the father of geometry, furthered the study of mathematics with his work, Elements. This comprehensive treatise compiled the knowledge of geometry up to his time and introduced rigorous methods of proof that would dominate mathematical thought for centuries. Euclid's systematic approach to geometry, including the development of axioms and theorems, became the blueprint for mathematical reasoning in the Western world. His work was so influential that it remained the standard textbook for over 2,000 years, guiding generations of mathematicians. Archimedes, another giant of Greek science, made extraordinary contributions to mathematics, physics, and engineering. He is perhaps best known for his work in geometry, calculating areas and volumes of complex shapes, as well as his development of the principle of buoyancy, which led to the formulation of Archimedes' principle. His work on levers, pulleys, and screw-like devices also laid the foundations for practical engineering and mechanics. Archimedes' ability to apply mathematical principles to solve real-world problems set him apart and influenced later developments in physics and engineering. Astronomy also advanced greatly during this period. As Greek thinkers sought to understand the movements of celestial bodies, figures like Hipparchus and Ptolemy worked to map the stars and planets, developing early models of the universe. The Greek model of the heavens, which placed Earth at the center, would dominate Western thought for many centuries. However, it was Greek mathematicians and astronomers who first attempted to understand the structure of the cosmos through mathematical and empirical observation. The influence of Greek science on future generations cannot be overstated. Greek mathematicians and scientists laid the foundations for much of modern science and mathematics. Their methods of observation, logical reasoning, and systematic experimentation have shaped scientific inquiry to this day. The ideas developed by figures like Pythagoras, Euclid, and Archimedes continued to inspire scholars during the Roman Empire and the Renaissance, and remain central to the study of science and mathematics today. Greek science was not just about accumulating knowledge, it was about developing a rational, systematic way of understanding the world, a legacy that would endure for millennia. Greek literature and drama have had a profound impact on Western culture, laying the foundation for much of what we now consider classic literature and theatrical performance. The epic poetry of Homer, particularly the Iliad and the Odyssey, stands as a monumental achievement in the history of literature. These works, composed in the 8th century BCE, not only captured the heroic age of Greek mythology, but also explored themes of heroism, fate, and the human condition that continue to resonate with audiences today. Homer's epics provided the blueprint for the epic genre, influencing countless authors and shaping Western storytelling traditions. They are filled with vivid characters and sweeping narratives that examine the complexities of war, honor, and the divine, setting a standard for storytelling that would endure for centuries. In addition to epic poetry, Greek theatre became an essential part of cultural life, with the development of both tragedy and comedy. Greek drama was born out of religious festivals, particularly those dedicated to the god Dionysus, and quickly evolved into a major form of entertainment and intellectual exploration. The tragedies of playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides are some of the most powerful works ever written, exploring deep moral and philosophical questions. Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, for example, is a tragedy about fate, free will, and the limitations of human knowledge, raising questions that remain relevant today. Euripides, with plays such as Medea and the Bacchae, delved into the psychological and emotional struggles of his characters, pushing the boundaries of dramatic expression. These works help to refine the genre, focusing on complex human emotions and the tension between personal desire and societal norms. At the same time, the genre of comedy flourished in ancient Greece, offering a sharp contrast to the serious tones of tragedy. Playwrights like Aristophanes used humor and satire to address the political and social issues of their time, often critiquing prominent figures and institutions with wit and insight. Aristophanes' plays, such as Lysistrata and The Clouds, employed clever wordplay and exaggerated situations to explore themes like war, politics, and philosophy, often leaving a lasting impact on the audience's view of their society. While tragedy explored the darker aspects of life, comedy provided a space for levity and critical reflection, offering a humorous but insightful critique of Greek culture. The legacy of Greek drama continues to influence modern theatre. The structure of the Greek play, with its dialogue and chorus, formed the foundation for dramatic works that followed. The conventions of tragedy, especially the exploration of moral dilemmas and the tragic hero, have been incorporated into countless works of literature, from Shakespeare to contemporary playwrights. Likewise, the sharp political and social satire of Greek comedy is still seen in modern performances, where playwrights use humor to address current events and societal issues. Greek theatre was not merely a form of entertainment, it was a vehicle for cultural reflection, encouraging audiences to question their beliefs and consider the larger forces at play in the world. This tradition has been carried forward in the global theatre, making Greek literature and drama an enduring pillar of artistic and intellectual achievement. Greek religion was deeply intertwined with every aspect of ancient Greek life, permeating the culture, politics, and personal experiences of its people. At the heart of Greek religious belief was a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own distinct powers, personalities, and realms of influence. The Olympian gods, led by Zeus, ruled from Mount Olympus, and each deity represented a different facet of life and nature. Athena, goddess of wisdom, Ares, god of war, and Apollo, god of the sun, were just a few among the many divine figures who played an essential role in shaping Greek identity. Myths about their origins, loves, rivalries, and battles not only provided entertainment but also served as moral and ethical guides for the Greeks, often reflecting the complexities and struggles inherent in the human experience. Religion was not an abstract concept for the Greeks, but something that touched every part of their daily lives. The gods were seen as powerful and involved in human affairs, influencing everything from the outcomes of wars to the success of harvests. People relied on their gods for blessings, protection, and guidance, often in the form of prayers or sacrifices. Religious devotion was practiced on an individual level and collectively through city-wide rituals. The belief that the gods could both punish and reward meant that the Greek people sought to maintain a respectful and reciprocal relationship with the divine. Temples were the focal point of religious life in Greek cities, built in honor of the gods they worshipped. These grand structures, such as the Parthenon in Athens, were not only places of worship but also symbols of a city's wealth, pride, and devotion. The temples housed statues of gods, offerings of food, incense, and precious items, all intended to honor the deities. Each temple's design was a reflection of its dedication. While the Parthenon honored Athena, the Temple of Apollo at Delphi was a place where people from all over Greece came to consult the oracle, seeking divine insight into their personal and political matters. Religious festivals were another crucial aspect of Greek religion. These festivals, often tied to the agricultural calendar or the mythological stories of the gods, brought people together in celebration and worship. The Olympic Games, originally held to honor Zeus, were perhaps the most famous, with athletes from all over the Greek world competing to gain favor from the gods. Other festivals like the Panathenaic Games and the Dionysia, dedicated to Dionysus, god of wine and revelry, celebrated both the divine and the human experience, blending athleticism, art, and music. These events, with their elaborate rituals, performances, and feasts, were expressions of devotion that also fostered unity and cultural identity among the Greeks. Greek religion was thus a vital part of the fabric of society, influencing everything from politics to art, and ensuring that the gods remained central to the life of the Greek world. Through temples, festivals, and daily practices, the Greeks acknowledged their dependence on the divine and sought to live in harmony with the powers that shaped their world. The influence of Greek religion continues to resonate today, as many of the myths, symbols, and ideas of ancient Greek religion still appear in modern culture, art, and thought. Greek warfare played a pivotal role in shaping the history of the ancient world, with the development of military strategies that would leave a lasting impact on later civilizations. Central to Greek military success was the hoplite, the heavily armored infantrymen who formed the backbone of Greek armies. The hoplites fought in a tight formation known as the phalanx, a shielded wall of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, their spears pointing outward. This formation was not just a defensive tactic, but a symbol of unity and discipline, reflecting the values of cooperation and collective strength that defined Greek society. The phalanx allowed Greek armies to engage in large-scale battles with precision, overwhelming their enemies through sheer coordination and force. The hoplite phalanx became the foundation of Greek military strategy, and its use was widespread across the various city-states. It was particularly effective in the tight terrain of Greece, where narrow passes and hills made it difficult for larger armies to maneuver. In battles like the famous Battle of Marathon, the hoplites, with their formidable formation, were able to outmaneuver and decisively defeat the much larger Persian forces. This victory, along with others such as those at Thermopylae and Plataea, showcased the power of the Greek military and the tactical genius of their commanders, who understood the value of maintaining the phalanx's integrity while adapting to the battlefield. Greek warfare was not just about the strength of the phalanx, however. It was also a driving force in the formation of Greek city-states and the expansion of Greek influence. The constant need for defense and military alliances led to the development of powerful city-states like Athens and Sparta, each with their distinct military traditions. Athens, with its naval supremacy, complemented the strength of its hoplite infantry, while Sparta's focus on land warfare and the phalanx system made it a dominant force in the Peloponnesian region. The rivalry between these city-states and their military prowess shaped the political landscape of ancient Greece, leading to the rise of empires and the eventual unification under Macedonian rule. The influence of Greek military tactics extended far beyond their time. The phalanx formation was adopted and adapted by numerous civilizations, including the Roman Empire, where it played a central role in the legion's effectiveness. The Roman military would refine the Greek tactics, incorporating the phalanx's discipline and structure into their own formations. The principles of unity, strategy, and coordinated action in Greek warfare also influenced later military thinkers, such as those in the Renaissance and beyond, who looked back to the Greeks for inspiration in their own military practices. Greek warfare, particularly the use of the hoplite phalanx, thus stands as a cornerstone in the development of military tactics. Its impact on the Greek city-states and the empires that followed is undeniable, shaping not just the course of ancient history, but also the strategic principles that would guide armies for centuries to come. The legacy of Greek warfare is seen not only in the battles won, but in the enduring influence it had on the civilizations that followed. The birth of democracy in Athens marked a revolutionary moment in the history of political thought. It was in the early 5th century BCE, under the leadership of figures like Cleisthenes and Pericles, that Athens introduced a political system that was unprecedented in its inclusivity. Unlike the monarchies and oligarchies of neighboring states, Athenian democracy allowed citizens to participate directly in the decision-making process, shaping the policies of the city-state through assemblies, councils, and public debate. This radical shift gave power to the free male citizens who could vote, propose laws, and hold public office, though the system excluded women, slaves, and foreigners. Athenian democracy was centered around the ecclesia, the assembly where citizens gathered to discuss and vote on laws, military decisions, and other important matters. Additionally, there was the Boule, a council of 500 members chosen by lot, which oversaw the day-to-day functioning of government and prepared legislation. These institutions gave rise to a political environment where decisions were debated openly and regularly, encouraging public involvement and fostering a sense of shared responsibility among citizens. While this system was not without its flaws, particularly in the way it limited participation, it represented a significant departure from the rigid hierarchies that had characterized previous forms of governance. The Athenian system also placed great importance on civic participation, making it not just a right but an obligation. Citizens were expected to serve in government and military roles when needed, thus creating a culture of civic duty that was deeply ingrained in Athenian life. The practice of ostracism, where citizens could vote to exile someone deemed dangerous to the state, was one of the more unique features of this system, highlighting the emphasis on protecting the city from potential threats to its democracy. Greek political institutions were not confined to Athens alone. Other city-states, such as Sparta and Corinth, also developed their own forms of governance, though they were typically more oligarchic or militaristic in nature. Sparta, for instance, had a dual monarchy alongside a council of elders and an assembly that represented the warrior elite, contrasting sharply with Athens' democratic ideals. The political structures of these city-states were often shaped by their particular societal values and military needs, but they all reflected the diversity of thought and experimentation in ancient Greece. The legacy of Greek democracy has had a profound influence on modern political systems, particularly in the development of democratic thought. The ideas of civic participation, the rule of law, and political equality, though imperfectly realized in ancient Greece, inspired later political philosophers and revolutionaries. From the Roman Republic to the American founding fathers, the very notion of democracy as a system of government by the people, for the people, can be traced back to the innovations of Athenian democracy. While modern systems have evolved far beyond the direct democracy of ancient Athens, the fundamental principles of self-governance and public debate remain as vital today as they were over 2,000 years ago. Greek democracy thus laid the foundation for the political systems that would shape the modern world. Greek colonization marked a significant expansion of Greek culture across vast territories, shaping the Mediterranean and the Black Sea for centuries to come. During the 8th to 6th centuries BCE, the Greek world experienced a period of rapid population growth, which created pressure on the city-states to find new lands and resources. This led to the establishment of colonies, which were not simply settlements, but vibrant extensions of Greek civilization. The founding of Greek colonies was driven by a combination of factors, including trade, resource acquisition, and the desire for new agricultural land. Cities such as Miletus, Corinth, and Rhodes sent out expeditions to create colonies far from the mother cities, establishing outposts in places like Italy, Sicily, North Africa, and the shores of the Black Sea. These colonies acted as hubs of Greek culture and commerce, with their inhabitants retaining strong connections to their origins while adapting to their new environments. The Greek colonies played a pivotal role in the diffusion of Greek culture. As the colonists integrated with local populations, they introduced the Greek language, religious practices, and architectural styles, influencing the societies they encountered. Over time, these colonies became centers of trade and culture in their own right, acting as intermediaries between Greece and the wider world. For example, the city of Massalia, modern-day Marseille in France, became a thriving trade center, linking the Greeks with the Celts of Gaul, while the colony of Byzantium, modern-day Istanbul, became a critical strategic point connecting the Aegean to the Black Sea. In these colonies, Greek political ideas, art, and philosophy flourished, creating a cultural blend that helped spread the ideals of the polis across different regions. Colonies in places like southern Italy and Sicily became known as Magna Graecia, a land rich in Greek culture that would later influence Roman thought. The establishment of these colonies also allowed for the continuation of the Greek way of life in regions far removed from the unstable politics of the mainland, providing opportunities for intellectual and artistic development. Furthermore, Greek colonization was crucial for the expansion of Greek economic influence. The colonies facilitated the flow of goods between Greece and distant lands, establishing networks of trade that allowed for the exchange of precious metals, grain, wine, and other commodities. These trade routes also brought new ideas and technologies into the Greek world, influencing Greek science, mathematics, and philosophy. In the centuries that followed, the legacy of Greek colonization remained deeply woven into the fabric of Mediterranean and Black Sea history. The cultural and economic influence of the Greek colonies was profound, helping to shape the development of ancient empires, from the rise of Rome to the later Byzantine Empire. Through colonization, the Greeks not only expanded their territories but also spread their culture across vast distances, ensuring that the ideals of their civilization would resonate throughout the ancient world. The economic foundations of ancient Greek society were deeply rooted in agriculture, trade, and the use of slavery, which together supported the thriving city-states across the Mediterranean. Greek society was built on the idea of self-sufficiency, with most city-states relying heavily on farming for their sustenance. Agriculture was the backbone of the economy, with crops like wheat, barley, olives, and grapes forming the basis of the Greek diet and trade. Olive oil and wine, in particular, were vital exports that helped connect Greece to the wider world. Land was a valuable asset in ancient Greece, and wealth was often measured by the size and productivity of one's landholding. The rural economy was primarily focused on subsistence farming, though in the more fertile regions, such as Attica and Sicily, surplus crops were produced for trade. The ancient Greeks also raised livestock, including sheep, goats, and cattle, contributing to their economy through both meat and wool. However, due to the limited arable land and the mountainous terrain of Greece, many farmers struggled to achieve full self-sufficiency, leading to the necessity of trade. Trade played a central role in the Greek economy, especially in cities like Athens, Corinth, and Miletus, where access to the sea allowed for easy connections to other Mediterranean civilizations. Greek merchants and sailors ventured across vast distances, trading goods like olive oil, wine, pottery, and textiles. The Mediterranean, Black Sea, and even as far as the Near East became part of the Greek trading network. This trade brought in luxury goods such as timber, metals, and grain, which were crucial for the development of Greek culture and the maintenance of the city-state. Slavery was an essential part of the Greek economy. It was integral to many sectors, including agriculture, mining, and domestic work. The labor of slaves helped sustain the agricultural economy, and slaves worked in the fields, especially in regions like the Peloponnese, where large estates required significant manpower. In the cities, slaves served as household workers, tutors, and artisans, contributing to the development of Greek craftsmanship and the production of goods for trade. Slaves were typically war captives, foreigners, or individuals sold into slavery due to debts, and their presence helped fuel the economic prosperity of the Greek city-states. The development of currency in ancient Greece was a significant economic innovation. Early Greek coinage, which began in the 7th century BCE in cities like Lydia, spread throughout the Greek world and facilitated trade. Coins became the standard medium of exchange, providing a reliable system for commercial transactions and the payment of soldiers, officials, and artisans. These coins helped stabilize and unify the economy, creating a sense of trust and ease in trade. Additionally, the Greeks developed financial institutions, such as banks and loan systems, to support economic growth, further solidifying their place as a hub of commerce. The Greek economy, therefore, was a complex and dynamic system that balanced agriculture, trade, slavery, and currency. Its foundations laid the groundwork for many economic practices that would later influence Western civilizations, proving the Greeks' lasting impact on economic thought and practice. In ancient Greece, the roles and status of women were heavily influenced by the city-state in which they lived, with stark differences between Athens and Sparta. In general, Greek women were expected to fulfill the roles of wife and mother, managing the household and maintaining the social order. Women's lives were largely confined to domestic spaces, with limited opportunities for public engagement. Athenian women, in particular, were considered the property of their fathers or husbands, their rights severely restricted. They were not allowed to participate in the democratic processes of Athens, nor could they own property independently or engage in politics. The ideal Athenian woman was expected to maintain the household, raise children, and ensure the family's reputation through her modesty and obedience. However, the situation in Sparta was markedly different. Spartan women were granted more freedom and influence within society. They had the right to own and inherit property, which was crucial in a society that relied on the training and military service of its men. Spartan women were encouraged to be physically fit, as their role was to produce strong offspring who could serve as soldiers for the state. They were also involved in the management of household affairs when their husbands were away at war, and they had greater control over their lives than women in other parts of Greece. Spartan women enjoyed more public visibility, attending social events and participating in religious rituals, but their primary duty remained the strengthening of the state through their children. Despite these differences, both Athenian and Spartan women were still constrained by the expectations of their roles as wives and mothers. Marriage was typically arranged for political or social reasons, and women had little say in the choice of their husbands. While their public freedoms were restricted, women could exert influence in other ways. In both city-states, women could be influential through their relationships with men, whether as wives, mothers, or patrons of religious cults. Notable women in Greek history and mythology include figures like Sappho, the famous poet from Lesbos, whose work continues to resonate today for its lyrical beauty and themes of love and desire. In mythology, women often played critical roles, though they were frequently portrayed as powerful but dangerous figures. Figures like Helen of Troy, whose beauty led to the Trojan War, and Medea, who used her intelligence and magical abilities to exact revenge, were both central to Greek myths. Yet, these stories also reflected the anxieties of Greek society about the power of women and their potential to disrupt the male-dominated world. The lives of women in ancient Greece, while marked by limitations, were not without influence or agency. Women found ways to impact their society, whether through poetry, myth, or the management of the household. Their roles, though restricted by the norms of the time, were crucial in shaping the fabric of Greek culture and society. Greek art, particularly pottery, played a crucial role in both the daily lives of the ancient Greeks and the expression of their artistic achievements. Pottery was not merely functional. It was often adorned with intricate designs and served as a canvas for storytelling. Early Greek pottery, during the geometric period, was characterized by simple, linear patterns and motifs, with minimal depictions of human figures. As Greek society evolved, so did their pottery, transitioning to more complex designs during the Orientalizing period, where influence from the Near East introduced stylized representations of animals, plants, and mythological scenes. By the 6th century BCE, Greek pottery had reached its height during the Archaic period with the advent of the black figure technique. Artists began to experiment with the human form, and vases became masterpieces of storytelling. The most iconic works of this period featured scenes from Greek mythology, athletic competitions, and daily life, with artists like Exekias and Pan Painter bringing to life figures such as Heracles, Achilles, and Athena. The black figure technique allowed for detailed depictions through a process of firing pottery in a kiln, creating stark contrasts between the glossy black figures and the natural red clay background. As Greek art continued to evolve, so did the techniques employed by artists. The red figure style emerged in the 5th century BCE, allowing artists to paint more fluid and naturalistic figures, offering a greater sense of movement and realism. This period marked a shift from the more rigid and stylized forms of the previous era to a more dynamic and expressive representation of the human body. This period also saw the rise of famous potters and painters like Euphronios and Pan Painter, whose works influenced not only pottery, but also broader artistic trends. In addition to pottery, the broader evolution of Greek art during the classical period reflected the ideals of balance, proportion, and harmony. Sculptures such as those of Polykleitos and Phidias embodied the Greek pursuit of perfection in human form, achieving an idealized representation of the human body that emphasized symmetry and proportion. These works exemplified the Greek reverence for the human experience and the belief in the beauty of the natural world. The Hellenistic period, following the conquests of Alexander the Great, saw a dramatic shift in artistic styles. Greek art became more expressive, emotional, and detailed, reflecting the complexity of human experience. Sculptures from this time, such as the Laocoön and the Venus de Milo, captured moments of intense emotion and physical movement, reflecting a departure from the idealized calmness of the classical era. Greek art left an indelible mark on the Western world. Its influence can be seen in Roman art, Renaissance painting, and sculpture, and continues to inspire artists today. The Greeks set the foundation for artistic expression, emphasizing the human form, beauty, and the depiction of mythology and everyday life in ways that would shape art for centuries to come. The legacy of Greek pottery, sculpture, and painting is a testament to the enduring power of art in shaping cultural identity and the human experience. Greek medicine laid the foundation for modern medical practice, with early contributions shaping the course of healthcare for centuries. Ancient Greek practitioners sought to understand and treat the human body through rational thought, systematic observation, and experimentation, departing from earlier mystical and religious explanations for illness. Instead of attributing diseases to divine punishment or the will of the gods, Greek physicians looked for natural causes, marking a significant shift in the way people thought about health and disease. The most notable figure in early Greek medicine was Hippocrates, often referred to as the father of medicine. He lived in the 5th century BCE and is best known for his work in distinguishing medicine from the realm of religion and superstition. Hippocrates introduced the idea that diseases were caused by natural factors, such as imbalances in the body's humus blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. This concept of the humoral theory became central to Greek medical thought and remained influential for centuries. Hippocrates also emphasized the importance of patient care, advocating for a holistic approach that included diet, exercise, and a proper lifestyle, all aimed at maintaining the body's balance and health. His ethical standards, particularly the Hippocratic Oath, which still holds symbolic significance in medicine today, emphasized the importance of treating patients with care, respect, and confidentiality. Following Hippocrates, another towering figure in Greek medicine was Galen, a physician in the 12th century CE, whose work would dominate the field for over a millennium. Galen built upon the foundations laid by Hippocrates, expanding and refining the humoral theory. He made significant advancements in anatomy and physiology, performing dissections of animals to gain insights into the human body. Galen's writings on medicine, particularly his work on the circulatory system and the nervous system, would influence both Islamic and European medical scholars throughout the Middle Ages and Renaissance. His theories, though later found to be incorrect in some respects, became central to medical knowledge for many generations. Greek medicine also saw the development of the medical school system, where physicians were trained through apprenticeships and study, promoting a system of knowledge sharing and specialization. Various schools of thought emerged, each with differing approaches to health, treatment, and disease. Some, like the Asclepiad school, were more focused on holistic methods and the use of natural remedies, while others were more analytical, focusing on diagnosis and anatomical studies. The influence of Greek medicine extended far beyond ancient Greece itself, affecting Roman medicine and shaping medical practice throughout the medieval and Renaissance periods. Greek thought on health, illness, and the body provided the intellectual framework for later medical advancements, particularly in the Islamic Golden Age, where scholars translated Greek medical texts and expanded on them. Greek medicine also paved the way for modern scientific medicine, where observation, diagnosis, and treatment are rooted in empirical evidence. The rational, methodical approach to healing, which began with Hippocrates and Galen, continues to be the foundation of medicine today, demonstrating the lasting impact of Greek contributions to healthcare. Education in ancient Greece was considered a vital part of a well-rounded life, shaping the minds of young men for the roles they would later play in society. The Greek ideal of education was centered on the development of both the body and the mind, a concept known as paideia. This comprehensive educational system was designed to cultivate citizens who were capable of contributing to both their city-state and the intellectual and cultural life of Greece. The curriculum, however, differed based on location and class, with the most renowned education taking place in Athens. Athenian education was particularly focused on developing well-rounded individuals who could contribute to public life, especially in the realm of democracy. Boys from affluent families attended schools where they learned a wide range of subjects, from literature and mathematics to music and physical training. The aim was to create individuals who were intellectually sharp, physically fit, and capable of participating in public discourse. The emphasis on rhetoric was one of the most distinctive features of Athenian education. Rhetoric was considered essential for anyone who wished to participate in the political life of the city, particularly in the democratic assemblies. Students were taught how to craft persuasive arguments, engage in debates, and speak effectively in public skills that were invaluable for politicians and leaders in Athens. Philosophy also played a central role in Greek education, especially in the later years of a student's education. The teachings of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid the groundwork for philosophical inquiry and were often incorporated into the curriculum, with an emphasis on critical thinking, ethics, and the pursuit of knowledge. For the Greeks, education was not just about acquiring practical skills, but also about learning how to live a virtuous life, understand the nature of the world, and find wisdom in all aspects of existence. The arts were another cornerstone of Greek education. Music, dance, and poetry were integral to training, as they were seen not only as ways to express creativity, but also as ways to instill discipline and moral values. The Greeks believed that the harmony found in music and art mirrored the harmony that should exist in a well-ordered society. In addition to music, physical education was highly valued, as it promoted health, discipline, and courage. Gymnastics and athletics were key components of the curriculum, preparing young men for both military service and competition in the public games that were an important part of Greek culture. The Greek educational system had a profound and lasting impact on Western schooling. Greek ideals of rhetoric, philosophy, and the importance of a liberal arts education formed the foundation of modern Western educational systems. The idea that education should shape not only skilled workers, but well-rounded individuals who could participate in civic life is a principle that continues to influence educational practices today. The Greek pursuit of knowledge, intellectual debate, and the cultivation of virtue laid the groundwork for the academic institutions of the Western world, with their focus on developing critical thinking, leadership, and moral reasoning in students. Thus, Greek education helped shape the intellectual framework of the Western tradition, its influence enduring for centuries. The decline of Greek power can be traced back to a series of internal strifes and wars that slowly eroded the unity of the once strong city-states. In the years following the Persian Wars, the Greek city-states, particularly Athens and Sparta, became embroiled in a long period of conflict known as the Peloponnesian War. This devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta, along with their respective allies, weakened the Greek world significantly. The war, lasting from 431 to 404 BCE, left both sides economically drained and politically fractured. The once glorious city-states, which had successfully repelled the Persian invaders, found themselves consumed by civil war and mutual distrust. By the end of the conflict, the balance of power had shifted, leaving Greece vulnerable to external threats. The aftermath of the Peloponnesian War saw a period of political instability and shifting alliances, with Athens, Sparta, and Thebes vying for dominance. The once proud Greek city-states were fractured, unable to unite against the growing threat of foreign powers. It was during this period of instability that Macedonia, a powerful kingdom to the north, began to rise under the leadership of King Philip II. Philip's vision for Macedonia was one of military strength and territorial expansion. With an innovative military strategy and skilled diplomacy, Philip was able to unite the often divided Greek city-states, either through force or through alliances, which brought most of Greece under Macedonian control. In 338 BCE, Philip decisively defeated the Greek city-states at the Battle of Chaeronea, effectively ending Greek independence. The once proud city-states, weakened by years of warfare and internal conflict, were unable to mount a successful resistance against the Macedonian military machine. Philip's victory marked the end of the classical Greek era, and his plans for further expansion, including the conquest of Persia, would pass on to his son, Alexander the Great. Under Alexander's leadership, Greece lost its autonomy entirely. After Philip's assassination in 336 BCE, Alexander ascended to the throne and continued his father's dream of creating a vast empire. Though he united Greece under Macedonian rule, it was clear that the Greek city-states no longer held the same power or influence they once had. They were now part of a larger, more formidable Macedonian empire that stretched far beyond the boundaries of Greece. The final nail in the coffin of Greek independence came with the rise of Rome. As the Roman Republic grew in power and influence, Greece became increasingly entangled in Roman politics. By 146 BCE, following the Roman conquest of the Greek peninsula, Greece was formally absorbed into the Roman Empire. The city-states that had once been the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and art were now part of a larger imperial system, their autonomy lost forever. While Greek culture continued to have a significant impact on Roman society, the era of independent Greek power had come to a close, marking the end of a brilliant chapter in history. Alexander the Great's conquests left an indelible mark on the world, the effects of which resonated for centuries. His rapid and unprecedented expansion from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and into India reshaped the ancient world. By the time of his death in 323 BCE, Alexander had established one of the largest empires in history, stretching from the western Mediterranean to the Indus River. However, it was not merely the vastness of his empire that ensured his legacy. It was the cultural fusion he instigated through his military campaigns. The spread of Hellenistic culture was one of Alexander's most significant accomplishments. As he conquered new territories, he brought Greek ideas, art, language, and customs to diverse regions, blending them with local traditions. Greek became the lingua franca of the regions Alexander conquered, facilitating trade, communication, and the exchange of ideas across vast distances. This blending of Greek culture with Egyptian, Persian, and Indian influences gave rise to a unique cultural milieu known as Hellenism. Cities such as Alexandria in Egypt became cultural and intellectual hubs, attracting scholars, artists, and philosophers from all corners of the known world. The establishment of these cities served as vital centers for the dissemination of Greek thought, philosophy, and scientific discoveries. Alexander's encouragement of intermarriage between his soldiers and local populations also helped to forge stronger ties between Greece and the territories he conquered. In doing so, he sought to create a sense of unity across his empire, merging Greek and indigenous cultures in a way that would endure long after his death. The fusion of Greek and Eastern traditions is most evident in the Hellenistic period that followed, where elements of Greek philosophy, art, and politics combined with local customs to create a new, hybrid cultural landscape. However, the very empire that Alexander built quickly began to unravel after his death. Without a clear successor or unified leadership, his vast empire was divided among his generals, known as the Diadochi, who fought among themselves for control. This fragmentation resulted in the formation of several Hellenistic kingdoms, such as the Seleucid Empire in the east, the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedonia. While these kingdoms continued to spread Greek culture and maintain Greek traditions, their internal conflicts and the rise of new powers like Rome and Parthia contributed to the eventual decline of the Hellenistic world. By the 12th century BCE, the Hellenistic kingdoms were no longer the dominant forces they once were. The Seleucid Empire fell to the Parthians. The Ptolemaic kingdom was weakened by internal strife and external threats, and Macedon was absorbed into the Roman Republic. Yet, despite the decline of the Hellenistic kingdoms, Alexander's legacy lived on in the enduring influence of Greek culture, philosophy, and politics on the Roman Empire and beyond. His vision of a unified world, where East and West merged through cultural exchange, would continue to shape the course of history for centuries to come. The Hellenistic Renaissance marked a period of remarkable cultural and intellectual growth following the death of Alexander the Great. Though his empire fractured into several kingdoms, the Greek influence persisted, giving rise to a unique era in which Greek culture flourished and merged with Eastern traditions. This period saw the continuation of the philosophical, scientific, and artistic pursuits that had begun in classical Greece, but now with a broader, more diverse audience. The resulting exchange of ideas, along with the patronage of kings and scholars, led to an unprecedented period of discovery and innovation. Philosophy, which had been dominated by figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, saw new schools of thought emerging in the Hellenistic world. One of the most significant philosophical movements was Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium, which emphasized virtue, wisdom, and self-control as the keys to a harmonious life. Stoicism became one of the most influential schools of thought in the Hellenistic and Roman worlds, advocating for personal ethics and moral responsibility in the face of life's uncertainties. Similarly, the Epicurean school, founded by Epicurus, proposed that pleasure, achieved through knowledge and moderation, was the ultimate goal of life. Both Stoicism and Epicureanism offered new ways of thinking about the self and the cosmos, providing frameworks for understanding personal happiness and societal order. Alongside these philosophical developments, the Hellenistic period was a golden age for science and mathematics. Archimedes, one of the greatest scientific minds of antiquity, made groundbreaking contributions to physics, engineering, and mathematics. He is most famous for his work on the principle of buoyancy, known as Archimedes' principle, as well as his inventions like the Archimedean screw, which was used to raise water for irrigation. Archimedes' insights into the properties of levers, pulleys, and spirals laid the foundation for much of modern physics and engineering. Euclid, known as the father of geometry, codified much of the mathematical knowledge of his time in his work, Elements, a collection of definitions, postulates, and proofs that became the standard textbook on geometry for centuries. His work not only influenced mathematics, but also had a lasting impact on logic and reasoning, shaping fields like physics and engineering for generations. Ptolemy, another influential figure of the Hellenistic period, made strides in astronomy, geography, and mathematics. His geocentric model of the universe, which placed the Earth at the center, dominated Western thought for over 1,000 years. Though later disproven by Copernicus, Ptolemy's Almagest, a comprehensive treatise on astronomy, was instrumental in the development of early scientific inquiry, providing a basis for future generations of astronomers to challenge and refine our understanding of the cosmos. The Hellenistic Renaissance also witnessed the flourishing of art. The era saw the rise of more naturalistic and emotive styles, as artists sought to capture the complexities of human emotion and movement. Sculptors like Lysippus, who revolutionized the depiction of the human body, and Praxiteles, known for his graceful statues of gods and mortals, epitomized the artistic achievements of this period. The blending of Greek ideals with Eastern influences gave birth to a rich, eclectic artistic tradition that celebrated both human beauty and emotional depth, leaving a lasting legacy on Western art. In sum, the Hellenistic period was a time of profound intellectual and cultural achievement. The revival of Greek thought and the assimilation of new ideas helped shape the course of Western civilization, influencing philosophy, science, and art for centuries to come. As Rome expanded from a small city-state into a dominant empire, it absorbed many elements of Greek culture, creating a blend that would shape Roman society for centuries. The Greeks, whose influence had already spread throughout the Mediterranean, had a profound impact on Roman life in numerous ways. The adoption of Greek culture was not only a matter of conquest, but also a conscious integration of ideas, philosophies, and traditions that the Romans found valuable and admirable. Greek philosophy, especially the works of Plato and Aristotle, were embraced by Roman thinkers and statesmen. While early Roman education was largely practical, focused on law and military matters, as Rome encountered Greek scholars and intellectuals, Greek philosophy began to take hold. Philosophical schools such as Stoicism, which emphasized virtue and rationality, and Epicureanism, which focused on personal happiness and the pursuit of pleasure, were adopted by many Roman elites. The writings of Greek philosophers provided a moral framework for Roman statesmen, offering guidance on how to lead with wisdom and integrity. The Stoic philosophers, like Seneca and Epictetus, who were deeply influenced by their Greek predecessors, found their teachings woven into the fabric of Roman thought. Stoicism, in particular, resonated with Roman ideals of duty, honor, and self-control, making it one of the most enduring intellectual influences in the empire. Greek art also left an indelible mark on Roman aesthetics. The Romans, though capable of producing impressive works of their own, adopted Greek artistic styles and techniques, especially in sculpture and architecture. Roman statues often replicated Greek forms, with an emphasis on the human body in its most idealized and realistic form. Greek influence can be seen in the intricate details and lifelike qualities of Roman sculpture, from the busts of emperors to the grand public monuments. Greek styles were not only revered, but also modified to fit the Roman context, which prized functionality and grandeur in public works. Greek temples inspired Roman architecture, and as the Romans built their own monumental structures, they incorporated the classical columns and porticos that had originated in Greece. The Roman architectural revolution, characterized by vast public buildings, baths, and arenas, owed much to the Greeks, both in design and in the underlying principles of beauty and proportion. Religion was another area where Greek influence was deeply felt in Rome. The Romans adopted many Greek gods, often with different names, but retaining the same characteristics and attributes. For example, the Greek god Zeus became Jupiter in Roman mythology, and Aphrodite was identified with Venus. The syncretism of Greek and Roman religious practices meant that many Greek rituals, festivals, and religious practices were incorporated into Roman life. Greek philosophers and priests also played important roles in the intellectual and spiritual lives of the Roman elite, influencing the development of Roman religious thought. Finally, Greek education and political thought had a lasting effect on Roman society. Greek teachers were highly sought after in Roman aristocratic families, and the education of Roman children often involved immersion in Greek language, literature, and rhetoric. The ideal of the well-rounded Roman citizen, capable of contributing to both public life and intellectual pursuits, was influenced heavily by the Greek educational system. Roman political thought was likewise shaped by Greek models, with Roman leaders frequently looking to Greek philosophy and rhetoric for guidance on governance and the art of persuasion. In many ways, the cultural and intellectual legacy of Greece became the foundation of Roman civilization. Through the adoption of Greek ideas, Rome not only preserved the ancient Greek tradition, but also expanded upon it, blending Greek and Roman elements to create a new, enduring cultural identity. The Greek influence on Rome remains one of the most significant cultural transmissions in history, shaping Western thought and civilization for generations to come. As the Roman Empire expanded its influence across the Mediterranean, it absorbed and adapted numerous elements of Greek culture, none more significant than Greek religion. While the Romans had their own pantheon of gods and spiritual practices, they came into close contact with Greek religious beliefs as they conquered the Greek city-states and interacted with Greek culture. This encounter led to the syncretism of Greek and Roman gods, with the Romans adopting and reinterpreting many of the deities from Greek mythology to fit their own religious framework. The process of adapting Greek gods was not simply a matter of renaming them. Rather, it was an integration of Greek characteristics, stories, and attributes into Roman spirituality. For example, Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, became Jupiter in Roman religion. Similarly, Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, was associated with Venus in the Roman pantheon. The Romans did not merely borrow the names, they embraced the underlying concepts, adding their own cultural nuances to these gods. The gods of Greek mythology were seen as divine figures whose influence governed both the natural and human worlds, and the Romans recognized their power while adapting their personalities and attributes to fit the Roman worldview. Greek religious thought also had a profound impact on Roman spirituality. The Greeks had a highly philosophical approach to religion, blending mythology with rational inquiry. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle had explored the nature of the gods, the soul, and the afterlife, and their ideas influenced Roman thinking on religious matters. Roman intellectuals, especially those involved in the Stoic and Epicurean schools of philosophy, engaged with Greek religious ideas, pondering questions of morality, the divine, and the nature of existence. Roman emperors, many of whom sought divine status, also looked to Greek religious ideas to shape their own rule, adopting the concept of the emperor as a god or semi-divine figure, a notion that had its roots in Greek philosophy and mythology. The influence of Greek festivals and rituals was also notable in Roman religious life. The Romans adopted and incorporated many Greek religious festivals, especially those tied to agriculture, fertility, and the cycles of nature. The most famous example is the Saturnalia, a Roman festival that shared similarities with the Greek Dionysia, celebrating the god Saturn with feasting, revelry, and role reversals. Greek rituals, including the practice of making offerings to the gods, the use of oracles, and the performance of sacrifices, became an integral part of Roman religious life. Temples dedicated to Greek gods were often constructed in Roman cities, and Greek priests, whose role was similar to Roman augurs and pontiffs, provided spiritual guidance and performed religious ceremonies. In this way, Greek religion and rituals were not simply absorbed, but were woven into the fabric of Roman culture. The integration of these practices allowed Roman society to maintain its unique religious identity, while embracing the wealth of religious thought and practice that Greek culture offered. Greek religious influence persisted throughout the Roman Empire, leaving a lasting legacy on Roman spirituality, mythology, and the practices that would continue to shape Western civilization for centuries. The Hellenistic world, which had flourished following the conquests of Alexander the Great, began to show signs of decline in the centuries that followed. The political and military struggles that plagued the Hellenistic kingdoms were primarily due to internal divisions, external pressures, and the relentless ambition of emerging powers. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, the Diadochi, who struggled for control of the vast territories. The lack of a strong, unified leadership and the continuous infighting between these successor states weakened their ability to fend off threats both from within and from powerful external forces. The Hellenistic kingdoms, particularly the Seleucid Empire in the east and the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, were engaged in constant warfare, which drained their resources and destabilized their political systems. In the West, the growing power of Rome began to loom large. The Roman Republic, once a relatively small city-state, expanded rapidly during this period, and its military prowess and political stability made it an increasingly formidable rival to the Hellenistic kingdoms. As Rome consolidated power over the Italian peninsula, it began to extend its influence into the eastern Mediterranean. The Romans' aggressive expansion and superior military tactics led to the eventual downfall of the Hellenistic powers. Rome's rise was marked by a series of decisive conflicts with the Hellenistic kingdoms. The Romans, with their disciplined legions and effective strategies, defeated the Seleucid Empire in the Syrian Wars and the Ptolemaic dynasty in the Battle of Actium, securing dominance over Egypt. The once thriving Hellenistic states, with their rich cultural traditions and vast territories, were slowly absorbed into the growing Roman Empire. The defeat of the Hellenistic forces in the Greco-Roman Wars signaled the end of their political autonomy. However, the influence of Greek culture did not die with the fall of the Hellenistic kingdoms. Instead, it became a cornerstone of Roman culture, as the Romans, who had long admired Greek art, philosophy, and science, began to assimilate these cultural elements into their own society. Roman elites sought Greek tutors for their children, and Greek philosophy, particularly Stoicism and Epicureanism, gained popularity among Roman intellectuals. Greek architectural styles, literary forms, and artistic techniques were widely adopted in Roman constructions, from the grand temples to the stately public buildings that characterized Roman cities. The eventual assimilation of Greek culture into the Roman Empire was not simply the conquest of a civilization, but a fusion that enriched Roman society. Greek became the language of the educated, and Roman emperors, while asserting their own power, often modeled their rule after the traditions of Greek kings and philosophers. As the Roman Empire expanded across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East, the legacy of the Hellenistic world continued to shape the course of history, blending with Roman innovations to form the foundation of Western civilization. Though the Hellenistic kingdoms had fallen, their cultural contributions endured, carried forward by the Romans who inherited and transformed them into something new. Even after the fall of the Hellenistic kingdoms and the rise of Rome as the dominant power in the Mediterranean, Greek culture continued to thrive and deeply influence Roman society. The Romans, who had initially conquered Greek territories, found themselves deeply enamored with the Greek way of life. Greek philosophy, art, and literature became integral to Roman intellectual and cultural life. The Roman elite, particularly those in the higher echelons of politics and society, viewed Greek culture as a mark of sophistication and education. They often employed Greek tutors for their children, and sought to emulate Greek artistic and intellectual achievements. Greek philosophy, with its diverse schools of thought, had a profound impact on Roman intellectual circles. Stoicism, in particular, found a significant following among Roman thinkers. Philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius adopted Stoic principles and became influential figures in Roman society. Stoicism's emphasis on virtue, self-control, and rationality resonated with the Roman ideals of duty and honor. Likewise, the teachings of Epicurus influenced many Romans, offering them a perspective on happiness and the pursuit of simple pleasures. The Greek tradition of philosophy was not merely imported by the Romans, but became a central part of Roman thought, shaping the way the Romans understood ethics, politics, and personal conduct. Greek art and literature also left a lasting legacy on the Roman Empire. Roman architecture and sculpture often drew heavily from Greek models. The Romans admired Greek architectural precision and style, and as a result, Greek-inspired columns, temples, and public buildings became standard features of Roman cities. Greek sculptors and painters had set a precedent for naturalism, and the Romans continued this tradition, creating lifelike statues that celebrated the human form. Additionally, the Romans were avid consumers of Greek literature. Works by Homer, Sophocles, Euripides, and other Greek playwrights were translated into Latin and widely read throughout the empire. Roman authors like Virgil, Ovid, and Horace were heavily influenced by Greek literature and mythology, incorporating Greek themes, characters, and forms into their own works. As the Roman Empire expanded, the blending of Greek and Roman traditions became more apparent. Greek culture did not simply remain confined to intellectual circles or the elite. It permeated every layer of Roman society, from public festivals to private households. The Roman pantheon, for example, was replete with gods that had Greek counterparts. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, and Poseidon was identified as Neptune. Roman architecture adopted Greek styles, and public buildings often followed Greek designs, featuring columns and porticos that evoked the grandeur of Greek temples. This fusion of Greek and Roman cultures was not one-sided. While the Romans absorbed Greek traditions, they also infused their own unique Roman characteristics into the culture. The Romans were more pragmatic, focusing on organization and administration, while the Greeks were more idealistic and focused on intellectual pursuits. As a result, the blend of Greek and Roman traditions created a civilization that combined Greek intellectual and artistic achievements with Roman practicality and governance, laying the foundation for much of Western civilization. This integration of Greek culture into Roman life ensured that, even as the Roman Empire spread across vast territories, the influence of Greece would continue to shape the empire's identity for centuries to come. The fall of the Greek city-states marked the end of an era in which Greek culture, politics, and thought flourished independently across the Mediterranean. The rise of Rome, however, soon overshadowed the once powerful Greek world. Rome's military conquests eventually absorbed the Greek city-states, bringing them under Roman control. Despite this political shift, Greek culture and ideas continued to influence the Roman Empire, and by extension, Western civilization. The Greeks, who had once been the conquerors and rulers of vast territories, found themselves, in a sense, ruling over the minds and hearts of their conquerors through their art, philosophy, and intellectual achievements. As the Greek city-states lost their autonomy, the cultural legacy of ancient Greece endured, albeit in a transformed context. Roman rulers, thinkers, and scholars regarded Greek culture with deep admiration, adopting Greek philosophy, literature, and artistic practices. The works of Greek philosophers such as Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates became integral to Roman education and intellectual life, and these teachings were passed down through the centuries. Greek literature, particularly the epics of Homer, found a new life in Latin translations, and continued to inspire poets and writers across the Roman world. Even as the Roman Empire expanded, the Greek influence remained strong, shaping everything from governance to education and religion. In the medieval world, the transmission of Greek knowledge was largely through the efforts of scholars in the Byzantine Empire and the preservation of Greek texts in monastic libraries across Europe. Greek learning, although somewhat obscured during the Middle Ages, experienced a revival during the Renaissance. Humanist scholars in Italy and other parts of Europe rediscovered Greek works, leading to a resurgence in the study of Greek philosophy, science, and art. This intellectual revival played a crucial role in the development of modern Western thought, sparking advancements in philosophy, science, literature, and the arts that would lay the foundation for the Enlightenment and the birth of modern Western civilization. The lasting impact of Greek civilization on Western thought and culture cannot be overstated. Greek philosophy, with its emphasis on reason, ethics, and the nature of knowledge, continues to shape modern philosophy and the way we approach questions of morality, politics, and existence. The Greeks' contributions to democracy, especially through the Athenian experiment in direct democracy, continue to influence political systems around the world. Greek art and architecture, with its focus on harmony, proportion, and human form, continue to inspire artistic movements today. Even in the realms of science and mathematics, the foundations laid by Greek thinkers like Euclid, Pythagoras, and Archimedes remain central to modern scientific inquiry. Although the political power of Greece faded with the rise of Rome, the intellectual and cultural contributions of the Greeks endured and blossomed in the centuries that followed. The legacy of ancient Greece is alive in the modern world, continuing to shape the way we think, create, and govern, proving that the fall of ancient Greece did not mark the end of its influence, but rather the beginning of its lasting impact on human civilization. The enduring legacy of ancient Greece continues to shape modern society in profound and far-reaching ways. From the realms of philosophy, art, and politics, to the very fabric of our cultural and intellectual life, the influence of Greece is woven into the foundation of Western civilization. Greek thinkers, like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, laid the groundwork for modern philosophy, establishing the principles of logic, ethics, and metaphysics that continue to influence philosophical thought today. Their ideas about democracy, justice, and the role of reason in human life are still studied, debated, and applied in our discussions about morality, governance, and individual rights. Greek art, renowned for its pursuit of beauty, balance, and human expression, also left a lasting imprint on the modern world. The Greeks' mastery of sculpture, as seen in works like the Parthenon marbles and the statues of gods and athletes, continues to inspire artists and sculptors around the world. The pursuit of symmetry and proportion in Greek art set the standards for aesthetic excellence that resonate in contemporary architecture, design, and even visual media. The classical style, with its emphasis on humanism, continues to influence the ways in which we portray the human form and the ideals of beauty in visual culture. In politics, ancient Greece gave birth to the concept of democracy, a system of government that has influenced the development of political institutions in modern Western societies. The Athenian experiment in democracy, despite its limitations and imperfections, set the stage for the democratic systems that now govern many nations around the world. Greek thinkers like Pericles and the philosophers who followed him debated the ideal structure of governance, the relationship between the citizen and the state, and the rights and responsibilities of individuals within a society. These discussions laid the foundation for modern political thought and continue to inform debates about governance, citizenship, and human rights. The role of Greek culture in shaping Western civilization cannot be overstated. From the Renaissance to the Enlightenment and beyond, thinkers have continually turned to Greek texts and ideas to inform their own work. The rediscovery of Greek philosophy during the Renaissance sparked a renewed interest in humanism, leading to a cultural and intellectual movement that emphasized the potential of human reason and creativity. Similarly, the principles of Greek democracy and civic responsibility influenced the development of modern political systems, while Greek art and architecture continue to shape our notions of public spaces and cultural expression. The continued relevance of ancient Greek ideas in contemporary life is evident in the ways we think about ourselves and the world around us. From the ideals of individual liberty and personal responsibility to the pursuit of knowledge and the exploration of the human experience, the legacy of ancient Greece remains a touchstone for contemporary thought. The questions and ideas raised by Greek philosophers and thinkers are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago, serving as a reminder of the enduring power of Greek intellectual and cultural achievements.